Chapter 81 New Legendary Sun. Just one more hour Raditz, you can come out of the healing pod by then. Bulma consoled the floating Raditz who seemed to be in frequent pain but held on better than before. Blub. Giving a thumbs up to Bulma, Raditz closed his eyes. He was a warrior and this amount of pain wasn't too big of a bother to him, especially now that it had spread to his entire body and had dulled significantly from the painkillers. His body felt both strong yet weak, always on the verge of breaking apart, or as Bulma put it before, his body was indeed breaking down and rebuilding itself stronger. I will return in an hour, talk to Launch until then, said Bulma and left quickly. She had to tally some of the tests done before. She'll return when it was time for him to get out. Launch, are you there? Asked the bored Raditz. She was the one who kept him company throughout this incredibly suffocating week. I am always here, exclaimed Launch and began to find topics from Otherworld. She had seen things, both horrifying and amazing. Otherworld was a melting pot of all of the universe. Managing it comes with more than a few perks. Say hello to Dad, Bardock. Launch picked Bardock up and connected him with the network. Although Bardock couldn't speak yet, being a Sun baby they learned very quickly. So Raditz passed his time with some quality family bonding and 1 hour was quickly finished. It's done, wondered Raditz. It's not that he was keeping tabs on the time, but his entire body felt incredibly light. There was no sign of pain. His limbs felt so easy to move that it was unreal, and his mind turned incredibly quickly. So many thoughts he could combine at once that it felt unnatural yet natural. Muscles, bones, nervous system and even my brain, everything seems to be working beyond my previous limits. And this is just my natural state. Is this what it feels to reach the peak of Sun race? It's unreal. SSSS. The healing pod had started draining its fluid during Raditz's contemplation, and within a few more seconds the fluid had drained completely. Step. Landing on the metal ground with light footsteps, Raditz removed the breathing apparatus connected to his face. HAAA. Finally, walking out of the chamber while stretching his body, Raditz brought his arm up for inspection. No extra muscles, his frame had perfect combination of speed and power. Each muscle fiber in his arm seems to have been built to its practical limit. Whoosh. A swift punch was thrown by Raditz without any key usage, yet the sheer power behind it had him contemplate. This is equivalent to a punch thrown by a 100 power level, and this was just a random punch from pure muscle fiber. Absurd. Raditz also had an inkling of a feeling. If he wanted to power up, all he had to do was keep pushing and he would power up as time goes on. Which meant he can become stronger during a fight itself. He can keep growing in a battle until he hits the maximum limit of a perfect Sun, if there even was one for him anymore. Zoom. The gate to the lab opened and Bulma came in. She had Raditz's royal armor in her hand and a smile on her face. Welcome back. Smiling a genuine smile himself, Raditz whispered. Glad to be back. Outside the lab, the dressed-up Raditz was standing in the middle of the garden, with Bulma, Nappa, and Pai Pai all waiting on the side. Pai Pai questioned Bulma with a concerned face. He just came out of the healing tank. Is this really the best time to test things? Bulma lightly huffed and replied without looking. He came out when he was perfectly stable, and didn't the dragon confirm he will be fine after 3:52 am, now it's 7 am. And it's not like I want to rush either, I have to get the live data or I wouldn't be able to help if anything goes wrong. On the side, Nappa simply listened to the queen's underlying dissatisfaction-filled tones towards each other, but he wisely didn't meddle in the king's business. All he was here to do was check in on the king and make sure he was fine. So, what do I have to do? And to Nappa's relief, Raditz's words brought the topic back on track. Clicking her pen, Bulma raised her finger and put it against her cheek in a thinking pose. Just do your normal moves without using your ki, I'll time each of them using this. Taking out a small device out of her pocket, Bulma pointed it towards Raditz, who nodded and got into his stance. Swish, swish, swish. Raditz's massive frame had started cycling through his moves, and as time passed he was slowly building momentum, something which continued to build and build on top of itself with no end in sight. It felt as if a storm had begun to take shape and was uncontrollably building up towards a calamity of the highest proportions. Whoom. Winds had started blowing around the Capsule Corporation. The skies were beginning to darken. This world itself was reacting to Raditz's increasing momentum. Crackle. Lightning clouds were forming into existence and the birds flying in the skies were desperately seeking shelter from something. The raw natural aggression behind Raditz's attack somehow aroused an instinctive fear in a creature, the fear of nature, the fear of having to stop a natural calamity with one's mortal body. It's like a tsunami is coming my way, thought Pai Pai with slight sweat trickling down her forehead. A solar flare. Nappa shook, remembering that one time his space pods had narrowly survived the biggest solar flare he had ever experienced. It's the same feeling as back then, when Goku used to rampage and we had to run for our lives. Bulma thought in a distracted way while she measured Raditz's data. And lastly, I feel I can overcome anything. I have become akin to an unstoppable force, a beast no one can stop when it begins its rampage. This particular feeling was awfully similar to the legends of that one Sun, the one who was said to arrive every 1,000 years. Raditz, through his sheer effort and ingenuity, had managed to push himself towards a level only found by chance. He was no longer a legend in name alone. He was finally worthy of that title, the title of the legendary Super Sun. Chapter 82 Spirit Balancing. After a few more days of rest, Raditz had started his training once again. Currently he was sitting on top of dry sand with his eyes closed. He wasn't an Uzuru nor was he in a carry, he was simply sitting in his natural base form, yet if one was to sense his energy they would see it was going up bit by bit as time passed. After a considerable amount of time Raditz seems to have reached a threshold and Rashi called out to him immediately. Stop, that ought to do it. Rashi's words worked like magic and Raditz's constantly growing energy stagnated, his eyes opened softly and he took a deep breath. Huff. While breathing in Raditz slowly stabilized his energy, his new physical properties needed much more patience and care to train, if he was to maintain Ultra Instinct that is. Sure, Raditz can indeed rage out and keep rampaging like a beast similar to Broly, but that would be more harmful to Raditz than helpful. It was a choice between technique and power for him. Ultra Instinct vs power level was the game, and looking at the broader picture Raditz decided to focus on technique. His power level will naturally keep up if his technique gets better, but his technique won't keep up if he focused solely on power leveling. Meanwhile Rashi walked up to Raditz and looked at him with his shining sunglasses. How is it? Do you feel your spirit is balanced with your body yet? Asked Rashi. This was a method the master came up with to help Raditz manage his ever-growing strength. And once again, through sheer experience the master created a technique that only the Yadrits knew in the original. Balancing one's spirit with their body was a technique Vegeta had learned in Yadrit. This was a way to master one's own power and power up considerably on top of that. As soon as the master came up with this technique, Raditz knew that he had to practice it. It was the best technique for a legendary Super Saiyan like him. I am in balance, but it'll take a few more days for me to truly become comfortable with my new strength. Clenching his fist Raditz felt his recent power up and its stability. Rashi hummed and narrowed his eyes, then turned around and walked away to relax on his beach chair. You have an amazing potential Raditz, it's something which is only limited by your self-control. Sliding on top of the beach chair Rashi lay down and picked up a magazine. As long as your mind can keep up you can always get stronger, do not give into a quick power up and end up losing your mind Raditz. If you do that, you'll have to work extra hard to regain the instincts which you have painstakingly mastered until now, so remember, slow and steady. Giving him a last look, Rashi said, your power shouldn't control you, you control your power, now off you go. After nodding softly at the distracted master, Raditz walked away for a swim. He had trained and now was the time to relax. He had decided to follow the master's advice for now, because he wholeheartedly agreed to Rashi's words. Although it pleased his Saiyan side to feel the exhilaration of his power increasing every second, he knew better. The world's strongest beings, angels, repeatedly emphasized training of instincts and technique over raw power. Raditz won't take their words as hot air. He wasn't arrogant to that extent. But he knew power was essential too, so after giving it much thought he landed on this specific technique, one to balance his mind and body. It will not only increase my ki as time goes on, I'll also maintain my ultra instinct. I might not increase my raw power as quickly as Broly does, but I'll be just as strong as him anyway. My peak potential has already surpassed any Saiyan that has existed or will ever exist. If a Saiyan body has a practical limit of 10, low-class warriors were a 3, mid-class were a 5 and elite class were a 7. All this was changeable by the use of Zenkais, but this was the limit if Zenkais weren't triggered correctly. But a 7 is where most Saiyans stopped. The legendary Super Saiyan was a 9 because according to Bulma's research, that was the practical limit of a natural mutation. Not everything can mutate at once or the child's gene will collapse. But Raditz was different. He was a full 10 on the potential scale. His body was pushed to its absolutely limit by his specific circumstances. Both genetically and practically there cannot exist a Saiyan better than him. Now how far he can really go was up to Raditz alone, who was the mind controlling this body. Splash! Jumping into the sea water Raditz thought leisurely while swimming in the waves. From a mechanical standpoint this body of mine has the most optimal design. From a genetic standpoint it has the most perfect gene sequence. My muscles are dense yet supple, my bones are strong yet light, my regeneration factor has gone up considerably, I can even regrow my tail if Bulma's tests were right. Even microscopically every pore of Raditz's body was aligned perfectly, be it from the inside or outside he was a work of art. And he had achieved all this from pure effort and an in-depth use of his Saiyan biology, because this was what happened when a species played on its strengths. Cell gained his regeneration from Piccolo, yet he was the one who could regenerate himself from one cell, and Piccolo was stuck panting after regenerating an arm. Well, enough about that, it's time for me to relax. Goku is about to return, the future timeline might make contact any day now. As Goku's energy drew nearer to the planet, the next big threat was also coming closer. Frieza was dead, so was Cold, he was the one with Bulma and Vegeta was nowhere to be seen, the original way of contact certainly won't work. So Raditz had to keep himself in top shape. It could be anyone coming out of that time machine, it could even be possible nobody comes. Maybe I managed to kill Cell myself. If that happens future timeline itself won't exist, or maybe everyone died and I failed, then also no one will come back. It's the very specific set of events of Bulma surviving with someone capable of holding off the androids, that a time machine can be made and a new timeline can emerge. Splash! Bringing his head out of the water Raditz took a deep breath, he then laid down on the water and simply floated on the waves. This was his way to relax himself completely, give himself to nature and feel its flow. Raditz didn't know what was waiting for him in the future so he had no use for worries. Cell, the androids, even his possible death, everything was up in the air until it was time, and all he could do was wait for said time. Chapter 83 Time Machine. In a desolate area, something quite amazing was happening out of everyone's sight. A machine with the logo of Capsule Corporation had just manifested out of thin air. Whoom! The machine was hovering in its position and looked to be doing some auto checks, then its humming sound stopped all of a sudden. The checks seemed to be over. Without further delay, it soundlessly lowered itself to the ground. Spider-like legs were jutting out of its bottom and gripped onto the soft sand below. SSSSS. The top compartment opened with some trapped air escaping into the environment, but this wasn't any normal trapped air. It was air from the future. This is the past? Mom, Dad, their energy signatures are, muttered a young man with medium-length purple hair. His center-parted hair was bit on the darker side of purple, putting it somewhat closer to violet. He had a Capsule Corporation jacket donned on his upper body and a sword strapped to his back. Looking at his watch, the man seemed to have matched the present time with the one in his memory. It's about time Goku and Gohan return. I should gather everyone else too. After making a decision, the man's face turned serious. A burst of white ki was released from his body, which soon started turning yellow. Ha! With a scream, his aura turned fully yellow, and so did his hair. His eyes took on a green tint and his muscles became more defined. Although nothing about this man could be attributed to the Saiyan race before this, he had very much proven himself as a Saiyan, a half-breed, but a Saiyan nonetheless. Not only was he a Saiyan, he was also a Super Saiyan. Huff, now we wait. The man muttered and then silently took a seat on the rock closest to him. Meanwhile, at different areas of Earth, every single Z-fighter could sense a massive burst of energy coming from a specific spot. That energy signature seemed to be acting as a guiding beacon. It was a stable signature, very different from energy which is being used in a battle. And most of all, it was an unfamiliar energy signature. Somewhere in the bottom of the ocean, the mediating Raditz opened his eyes. That feeling, it's a new guy, so someone had to travel to the past after all. That means I failed to deal with the androids. Or, am I the one keeping the enemies at bay while someone else ran back to the past? Raditz thought quietly. Neither of these scenarios were good news to him, because that would mean two things could have happened. 1. The androids had powered up so much that they could keep up with the legendary Super Saiyan. Something like this was definitely possible. According to the original author's words, Cell Max, if completed, would have been so strong even Broly couldn't beat him. Who knows, maybe Gero made something like that sooner. Raditz wondered what the chances of such a thing were. He knew of Gero's genius firsthand. He had personal experience working on Android T. The man was a scientific prodigy. It's possible, thought Raditz. He could still deal with it if this was the case. What he couldn't deal with was the next possible scenario. Or as he called it, the second option, one even worse than this one. In this option, something must have killed Raditz. He was definitely not dying of a heart disease, so it's a different set of events that would lead of his death. Someone or something had managed to take out the legendary Super Saiyan. Silently, this was no laughing matter. Well, I won't solve the mystery here, would I? Almost everyone is about to reach the destination. I better get going too. Raditz shot out of the ocean like a torpedo. He was going to Kame House. Bulma and Pai Pai were both there too. He was spending a lot of time at the Rashis right now because he had to get a handle on his improved body, but Bulma and Pai Pai seemed to think he was pushing himself too much too soon, so they tagged along. Splash! A large amount of water splashed with Raditz bursting out of the ocean water. A white aura enveloped Raditz for a split second and evaporated all the water on his body. Swiftly making his way to the Kame House, Raditz landed on the ground, opened the fully unlocked door and walked in. Master Rashi, did you sense that? Asked Raditz after he saw the mood in the room was serious too. Rashi nodded while sitting completely straight. His TV was turned off, which meant he wasn't playing around. Yes, who is that? A new enemy? Someone from the Frieza Force coming back for revenge? Asked Rashi, to which Raditz shrugged his shoulders. I don't know who it is, I am going to see for myself. Would you like to tag along? Rashi shook his head instantly. He had decided to stay retired after he had seen what Raditz was capable of. His students had already surpassed him many times over. There was no need for an old man like him to make a move, but unlike Rashi, who had already lost his youthful vigor, Bulma and Pai Pai still had plenty of youth left. You are going to face a new enemy so soon? No way, Raditz, I am coming with you. Pai Pai was the first to object. She had become a lot stronger after Raditz had taught her ki a while back. According to Bulma, she had a power level of 110. And she was fully intending to go along with her husband, and it wasn't only her who had such thoughts. I am coming too, Bulma stated without giving much room for argument on the topic. Is that so? Raditz had a thoughtful look to him after hearing the statements of the two moms. This energy signature was weaker than him and it was stationed in a single spot. It should mostly be a friendly visit. Alright, you two can tag along, decided Raditz. Bulma and Pai Pai smiled at the decision, then Bulma quickly called up her driver cum bodyguard. Hello, yes, bring the jet to Kame House. Roger, answered a muffled voice. Raditz raised his eyebrows at Bulma after hearing the voice. He asked Bulma about this decision of hers curiously. Is that who I think it is? Why did you take in Violet as your bodyguard? Smiling a sly smile, Bulma laughed a cute evil laugh. Remember when she tried to trick us on Android 8's design drawings, and got instantly defeated by you? She was pretty scared that she messed up after that. So she came to me asking for a job as a henchman. She seemed pretty strong at 150, so I kept her as my bodyguard. No joke, 150 is Violet's official power level. Laughing along with his evil-sounding wife, Raditz shook his head. As long as you keep Android T with you, go for it. Bulma smiled. That was a given. Android T was always with her as a capsule. He was her last line of defense if anything were to happen. Whoosh. The flight sounds came sooner than Raditz expected. Bulma seems to have upgraded the machine again. We will be off, Master Rashi. Rashi had gotten back to watching TV by now, but Raditz knew the master had heard them. So he walked out with Bulma and Pai Pai towards the jet parked on the ground. Get us to this position, Violet. Bulma said while sending a rough location given by Raditz. Nodding her head, Violet took her helmet and put it on. Yes. A short and concise answer was all she gave, a remnant of the discipline maintained during her days in the Red Ribbon Army. Getting into the jet, Raditz looked towards Bulma's new bodyguard. She was someone who had zero loyalty and would betray anyone without a second thought. And she did do exactly that with Red Ribbon Army when it was in some real trouble. But she seems to have no extra thoughts right now. Her personality likely got a bit milder as years went by. Figured Raditz, but it was only a bit better. Her ideas were along the lines of Capsule Corporation's strongest, best work for them. She would still definitely run away if Capsule Corporation was in danger. Run away if Capsule Corporation is in danger? Haha, if even Capsule Collection is in danger, nowhere in this universe would be safe. Laughed Raditz internally. So it seems Bulma did indeed manage to get herself a permanent bodyguard. Good on her. His wife was learning the ways of the queen very well. Raditz was so proud of her. Chapter 84 Future Trunks. With directions given by Raditz, the group soon reached their destination. Bulma's jet, having been upgraded again, had a maximum speed comparable to Piccolo's. They are here, announced Piccolo. He had his hands folded and his eyes glued to the Nucian. Something about him irked Piccolo the wrong way. Piccolo was a sensible Z fighter. His senses were strong, his hearing was stronger, and everything was telling him that this guy knew all of them. But none of them had met him before if their reactions were anything to go by. So although Krillin and Yamcha attempted to make small talk with the man, Piccolo stood on guard. Whoosh. During Piccolo's contemplation, Raditz's jet had already arrived and was in the process of landing before the group. Hey Raditz, Bulma, Pai Pai, over here. Krillin greeted the trio, but nobody noticed how the mystery man's expression changed after looking at Raditz, Bulma, and Pai Pai coming down the plane. Nobody noticed, except for Piccolo. I knew it, something's off about him, he keeps staring at them, especially Raditz. Piccolo frowned but still quietly watched Raditz picking up Bulma and jumping off the hovering ship, and Pai Pai swimming up to them by herself. The trio were still continuing their previous conversations and laughing merrily while getting out. Now this wouldn't be problematic anywhere else, but this was a serious situation and a possible battlefield a while ago. So this contrast had everyone's sweat drop a little, everyone except the mystery man. He was a bit more than a bit shaken up. Okay. The new man had fumbled his mystery act as his eyes twitched involuntarily. He didn't know Bulma would be so free and unfettered. Forcibly taking his eyes off the three, the man carefully gazed at the currently landing spaceship. He started at it for quite a while too, as if remembering some fond memories. Grr. Piccolo growled in a low voice. He was sick of this man acting all mysterious. If he wasn't capable of defeating him, Piccolo would have attacked long ago. So he could only patiently wait as Bulma took her bodyguard and the four came up to their group, Raditz taking the lead for this one. Oh, a Xian? Half-breed Xian? A human Xian half-breed on top of that. Hello, I am the Raditz, the Xian King, nice to meet you. Raditz smirked as he walked up to the man leisurely. That sword of yours seems to be made from a metal Bulma and I are trying to create right now, but you seem to have created it first. Could you tell me by any chance how you managed to do the quenching process? You seem to be a fan of Capsule Corporation too. The man was already sweating profusely after Raditz had come up to him. Raditz's massive body was covering him up almost entirely and forcing him to look up. His words were putting a lot of psychological pressure on him too. Normally he would attack when encountering such a situation, as he had his fair share of dealing with a massive opponent himself, but Raditz was supposed to be that Xian. I don't know the process, someone made it for me, sorry. The man fumbled a bit but took control of the situation anyway. His mom had told stories of the time Raditz was still alive and how the androids wouldn't be a problem if he was around. Keeping the legendary Super Xian alive was one of the most important goals for coming to the past as well. Oh, disappointing, but no worries, I am sure we'll figure it out soon, in the future. Raditz didn't seem disappointed by the fact he couldn't get the process out of the man. He maintained his smirk and stepped away from the man, no longer putting pressure on him. He had confirmed what he needed to and now was time to watch the play. So what's your deal? You got a name to you? Asked Raditz, to which the man cleared his throat and nodded, getting into character. My name is Trunks, I come from a faraway place. There is some information I need to give you. The Earth is in danger. Some of the Z fighters gasped. Raditz stood still, but Piccolo had now taken it upon himself to get to the bottom on this. What do you mean? Why should we trust you when you act so suspiciously? Now Trunks wasn't confident against Raditz, but Piccolo was someone he had zero trouble messing around with. He was stronger than him, so what was the fuss about? I can't tell you about my origins, sorry, but I have some important news. I wanted to wait for Goku and Gohan, but if Mr. Raditz believes me, I can provide you the information right now. Trunks had two options while coming to the future, telling Goku what was going to happen or telling Raditz what was about to happen. It was because Goku had actually fought against the androids a few times before collapsing to his disease, but Raditz had died before he could even face the androids. So Trunks had a choice to make. Who would be the most reliable person to tell this information to? Right now Raditz seems to be a better option than Gaku. Raditz surviving was utmost priority and he needed to get the necessary information out. As for his own birth and origin, he'll let nature take the lead. Giving another look to the girls standing a bit far away, Trunks smiled just a bit. His mother seemed much happier right now. Believe you? Let's say I do, Trunks. What you want to tell me? Raditz folded his arms and looked at Trunks, who pointed to a rock far away from the group. Please come with me for a bit. Trunks wanted to say the important things away from everyone's prying eyes. He wanted to keep his influence over the future as little as possible. He didn't know currently how things would change if everyone knew everything. Oh come on. Why the secrecy? We want to know too. Krillin cried out in justice, but Trunks only gave him an apologetic smile. Yamcha and Tetsu followed along, wanting to know. Tien and Piccolo kept quiet and Raditz himself thought about his options for a few seconds. He could go with Trunks or he could change things up a bit. This was a new timeline now that Trunks had returned, so it was up in the air how much really mattered. Decisions. Chapter 85 Bleak Future. Please come with me for a bit, Mr. Raditz. After taking into consideration Trunks's repeated persistence and the Z-Fighter's own desires, Raditz made up his mind. Shaking his head, Raditz decided to stay right where he was. Trunks's future won't change even if he told them everything, so it really didn't matter much. Tell me what you want to right here, even if you whisper it to me somewhere else. Pointing towards Piccolo, Raditz said. He'll hear it, those ears aren't for show, you know. Piccolo huffed at Raditz's statement but didn't comment. This way he would have an easier time as well. Trunks himself seemed helpless, but he had to do something. Even waiting for Gaku and talking somewhere else didn't seem safe anymore. Well, he'll just have to take the plunge now. Raditz surviving was extremely important. So sighing once in his mind, Trunks hoped the future will still play out the way it did. Although he wasn't sure if this was a new timeline or changing things here will change his time too, he could only hope for the best now. Standing up from his rock, Trunks took a deep breath and dropped the news. Mr. Raditz, please be careful of Pai. You'll die by her hands soon. Pursing his lips, Raditz breathed out, and so did Piccolo, but it was from shock rather than resignation, like it was for Raditz. Raditz will soon die by Pai's hands. How could it be? This seemed impossible, yet this man was sure of it. Piccolo was very confused, but he was willing to listen. He'll find out what the deal with this man was. But Pai herself was devastated and extremely angry. What nonsense are you talking about? I would never dash. Pai, please, be quiet. Raditz interrupted Pai, who was now even more desperate seeing that. Raditz, you have to believe me? He talking nonsense. Shaking his head, Raditz lovingly rubbed his wife's cheek. I know you wouldn't do that, but let him finish his words. I can sense he isn't lying either. Is there something else you want to clarify? Trunks, not knowing how close he was to getting pummeled by the seemingly calm Raditz, continued. Trust me, I am not joking. Please keep her under close attention and watch your back. After pausing his speech for a while and nodding his head without much emotional fluctuations, Raditz looked as if he was simply entertaining Trunks. Let's say I believe this too, but before you say anything more, tell me who you really are. Trunks, that name is awfully similar to a name Bulma came up with while discussing baby names a while back. Gazing at Trunks sharply, Raditz said. Briefs, Trunks is a name associated with that family, isn't it? So tell me, Trunks, who are you? Looking down at the ground, Trunks silently pitted himself. Why was it so hard to hide anything from Raditz? He felt like Raditz was too damn observant. Mom was right, if he was alive things would really be different. Understanding that, Trunks decided to go for it. To hell with it. He needed Raditz to believe in him. You are right, Mr. Raditz. I am a part of the briefs. I come from the future. Gasp. Everyone gasped and their eyes changed subtly towards Pai. If this was true, then Pai will actually... Even Pai herself seemed to be in denial of reality and simply repeated I would never over and over again, until Raditz hugged her sideways. It was only then that she relaxed a little bit. Trunks was unknowingly getting closer and closer to getting destroyed by Raditz. But he went on, not knowing how close to the edge he was really playing. The only reason he could still talk was because Raditz knew what he was telling must have happened somehow. My father is Vegeta. I was brought up by Mom Bulma and she is the one who named me too. Although this information should have made Raditz immediately snap, Bulma snapped even faster than him. Are you out of your mind? Vegeta? I am married to Raditz? And I am pregnant. You are insane. Boom. Trunks' eyes went wide from the sudden pain he was feeling. The knee he just received to his stomach almost sent him to the other world. And Raditz's glowing yellow eyes and dangerously growing ki was scaring Trunks way too much, so he somehow straightened himself up. But before he could speak, Raditz did. I'll give you one last chance to explain yourself. Keeping his mind in check, Raditz broke apart Trunks' words and gave the boy his last chance. You call Bulma mom, yet you say she raised you as if that wasn't a normal thing to do. So if I am understanding it right, you have a different mom. One who didn't raise you. Nodding his head, Trunks looked helpless. He was just getting to that. I do. I am used to calling Bulma my mom because she raised me, but my real mom's her. Pointing towards the girls standing together, Trunks clarified. Violet, she's my mother, I get my hair from her. Fixing his hair and emphasized it. Violet herself didn't think she would be pulled into this talk out of nowhere and widened her eyes. I am your mom? Wow. Trunks nodded helplessly and continued. After my mom got pregnant with me, the briefs took us in. I was even named by them. But soon after my dad died against the androids, Mom went to find them for revenge and never returned. Vegeta and Violet, this was an unexpected combination Raditz was confused about, yet it seemed possible now that Violet was living within the Capsule Corporation. Vegeta got on with Violet, future Trunks got it on with Mai. Raditz felt like the father and son have a thing for old DB characters. I understand, I am interested in your story, but before that I want to know something else. You told me what happened to Vegeta, but what happened to Nappa? Trunks told what he remembered in short. Mr. Nappa also perished against the androids. Ranfan was killed subsequently too. Holding his hands up for a second, Raditz almost gasped. Hold on a second, Ranfan. Nodding his head, Trunks said helplessly. Yeah, she was Mr. Nappa's partner. Raditz was speechless at this information. How the hell did Nappa get together with Ranfan of all people? Advanced chapters ahead on Patreon. Chapter 86 King's Pride. After satisfying the individual curiosities of the Z-Fighters, Trunks finally explained his agenda. The question-answer session went on for a while before the Z-Fighters understood what had happened in the future. So what you are saying is this Jero guy created androids that will kill every single one of us. And he has already succeeded in the future, so you came back to the past to stop this from happening? Asked Krillin with some tangible fear in his voice, but it wasn't only Krillin, every Z-Fighter had a serious mood. Sadly, even after watching the mood, Trunks had to gravely nod and confirm Krillin's fears. By now he had given out almost all the necessary information he had. The android's threat, the time machine, and his hopes to save Goku and Raditz from certain death. There wasn't much more space remaining for clarification, but he still clarified some more anyway, just to emphasize the seriousness of the issue. Yeah, only me and my mom, sorry, Bulma survived to the end. There was Mr. Gohan too, but he perished in battle. Yamcha opened his mouth wide and exclaimed, Gohan? Wow, the little guy sure grew up quickly. Trunks smiled with sadness. He doesn't know about Gohan's younger years, but he did spend a lot of time with adult Gohan. In fact, it was his entire childhood that he had spent with Gohan. He was both a teacher and a friend. Mr. Gohan was my sensei. He alone used to fight 1 against 3, but he couldn't keep up. One day they got to him too. Clench. Gripping his fist tightly, Trunks remembered that scene. This was the event that forced him to go Super Saiyan. It wasn't something he could forget this easily. His hatred for the androids was an all-time high because of it. Meanwhile, Raditz had keenly noticed Trunks said 3 androids, not 2. Now this was a big game changer. That meant even if the timeline went normally, something must have happened for Jero to release another one. And there was only one variable here, him. So Jero created another android to fight against me. Figures, I am quite the high-profile man. His actions and powers were broadcasted on national television for all to see. Unless Jero was blind, he would take precautions. And that precaution must be the new android. But this was in the future. After the arrival of Trunks, even more changes can happen just like it did in the original. Trunks, if you don't mind, rest a few days at Capsule Corporation. I want to take a good look at the time machine. Trunks seemed unsure and wondered how he should go about refusing. He had only this one time machine and very limited fuel. If anything were to happen to it, he would be stuck here forever. That was not something Trunks wanted to see happen. Him getting stuck here would mean his mom would be all alone in that world. That was a horrific thought he never wanted to come to pass. Trunks. Raditz's words brought Trunks out of his daze, but when he was about to make an excuse, Raditz spoke again. I need to check this for your own good. We have to know if this time machine is working with split timelines, or is this something which brings you to your own timeline's past. Understanding that would help both of us. If it's a split timeline, you coming here will change things for us but not for you. Taken aback by Raditz's words, Trunks nodded a little unsurely. Mom told me she wasn't sure what would happen. I came here to take a chance and see if changing the past will change my future too. But if changing the past doesn't change the future, then I have created a new timeline. Shit, there could be more androids running around now. Raditz smirked at the mumbling Trunks and swiftly patted his shoulder with force, surprising the boy. Giving a smile to the boy who was forced to grow up due to the circumstances, Raditz said lightly, War has made you far too tense. Relax, this is the past. There aren't any androids here. You might be a half-breed, but you are also a Saiyan. Don't fear war, relish in it. You will find things have become a lot easier for you. Trunks was someone who was raised the human way, so all he knew about Saiyan instincts were what he had excavated himself. There was no one to guide him back in the future, but now that he was here, with all the Z-Fighters with him, Trunks can grow up to be a capable warrior very quickly. Although Trunks was surprised at Raditz's comfort, he couldn't just let go of his accumulated worries so easily. But if changing the past doesn't my future, I would have created a new timeline and doomed it to. Then there will be another set of androids as well? This is not Snap. Chopping Trunks on the head, Raditz rubbed his purplish-violet hair harshly. What did I tell you just now? Relax. You are under too much pressure. You shouldn't have to carry such baggage at this stage. Even Saiyan babies aren't sent to planets they can't handle. You don't have to fight the androids all alone, kid. This is an adult Saiyan's job. Looking plenty confused, Trunks spoke back. But I am all alone? I am the only one who can protect the future? There is no one else to help me. Smirking at Trunks, Raditz folded his hands. That's where you are wrong, kiddo. You are not alone and you have nothing to fear. Why? Because I am here. Giving a ferocious grin, Raditz flared his massive ki. Referencing the best hero now of all times was a bit abrupt, but it was too good of an opportunity to pass up for Raditz. So he did a Sun version of the gig, and miraculously he managed to pull it off too. He was totally expecting a sweat drop scene happen. Either would have worked for Raditz, one will lighten the mood and one would give Trunks hope. The hope one seems to have worked out. Kiddo, although you come from the future, currently you stand before me. And as long as you are in my domain, you are under my protection. I am the Sun King, Raditz. No one can threaten my people and get away with it. Snapping his fingers, Raditz asked Bulma without looking back. How long do we need to get the blueprint on this thing? Bulma understood he was asking her and gave an answer right away. She could see her style all over the machine. Understanding how long she'll need to take it apart wasn't that hard. I'll need a week to get everything right, but if we work together it'll take around 3 days. Raditz nodded, then told Trunks exactly what was going to happen. You hear that? In 3 days, the time machine will be ready. And after that? I'll travel to the future with you. Those glowing yellow eyes were exuding a kind of confidence Trunks hadn't seen in his entire life, and the craziest thing of all, he felt like Raditz could really do it. He really could. I'll take care of the androids for you, both in the future and if need be, in the past as well. You have my word, soldier. Trunks' eyes involuntarily widened. After Gohan's death he had forgotten how it felt to have help, to have someone care about you, to not worry about living through the night, because there is someone to watch your back. Raditz meanwhile smiled at the very much shaken up Trunks, and pushed his fist on the boy's chest. Now, are you coming to the Capsule Corporation or not? Sniff. Wiping away the tears accumulating in his eyes as the stress left his body, Trunks smiled a real smile. I'll come with you, Sun King. Advanced chapters ahead on Patreon. Chapter 87 Suspicion. After Trunks agreed to stay for a few days at Capsule Corporation, it was the Z Fighters' turn next. They needed a direction to work towards as well. Although nobody was sure if there were multiple timelines yet, Raditz knew for a fact that saving the future won't save this past. The androids will come again, so will greater threats like Cell. Grr. With a sudden scowling face and a low growl, Piccolo broke Raditz out of contemplation. He needed answers. He didn't like the sudden risks Raditz was talking either. Going to an unknown point in time with an unknown guy who popped out of nowhere was a stupid decision which Piccolo would never take, so he needed to know if Raditz was thinking this through. Raditz himself didn't seem to mind Piccolo's interruption either. He simply looked at the group and explained his actions to the gang. Especially Piccolo. I'll be fine, Piccolo. I am not overestimating myself. These are the same androids we'll have to face soon. I'll bring back as much information as I can about them. I hope you guys get stronger while I am away too. This might not be a solo job. Although Raditz said it lightly, the Z Fighters understood right away why Raditz was doing what he was doing. Indeed, he wanted to help Trunks, but he was also taking the risk to collect information on the enemies which are supposed to wipe them out. Knowing what they were up against firsthand in such a case was always good. After the Ginyu Force incident, the Z Fighters knew that working as a team was necessary. Sometimes. Take care of yourself, man. Yamcha patted Raditz on the back. This was his way of showing support to the bravery of Raditz. I will. Time's tight. I need to get going soon. Will you guys bring Kakarot and Gohan up to date? They'll be here in a few minutes. I can already sense their ki. Krillin and the rest of the Z Fighters agreed right away. Trunks saw that and threw the medicine he brought along to Krillin. Snap. Who caught it and cradled it securely, for the fear that he'll break the only container and Gaku will die because of him. Alright, we'll be off. The group of now 5 people went back to Bulma's jet, but Pai Pai maintained a clear distance from Raditz. She wasn't told by anyone to do it, she did it herself. She feared that she might suddenly go crazy and stab Raditz to death. It must be my nails, concluded Pai Pai. Her nails were one of the sharpest biological materials on Earth. It can cut through stone, titanium, and even Sun skin. That must be it. I somehow went crazy and stabbed Raditz when he wasn't paying attention. I am a horrible fish. Other than this, she saw no reason why she would have done something like that. She had to have gone crazy. Maybe she should get her head checked. Raditz had meanwhile noticed this and called her back. Come here, Pai Pai. Shaking her head, Pai Pai swam away some more and settled at a far corner. Shaking his head at her antics, Raditz attempted to calm her down. It couldn't have been you, Pai Pai. You might have enough ability to catch me off guard, but you don't have the need. Patting Trunks on the back, Raditz asked. How are you so sure Pai Pai killed me? Although Trunks felt awkward, he replied truthfully. Mom Bulma told me. She saw it happen with her own eyes. Scrunching up his eyebrows, Raditz rubbed his chin. Anything else she told you? Anything at all? Trunks attempted to try and remember if there was anything else, but he could only get some random details right now. After killing you, Pai Pai seems to have licked her lips and gazed at Mom, before jumping out of the window. That's all I remember Mom telling me, sorry. Pai Pai frowned at obviously false words and attempted to defend herself. I never lick my lips. That's creepy and I don't have to do it either. My skin is always moisturized. Now that might seem like random banter, but this point got Raditz thinking. There was more to it than meets the eye. He had an inkling of an idea on what could have happened, but he wasn't sure yet. Pai Pai, I might have an idea why you did what you did, but I am not quite sure of my guess yet. We cannot pinpoint anything with this little information, but just to be on the safe side, Capsule Corporation will be on lockdown from today. Lockdown. Bulma didn't understand why Raditz wanted to close down the entire Capsule Corporation. This seemed too abrupt, so he must have something in mind. The entire thing? Asked Bulma to understand his intentions a little better. Raditz seriously considered her question and gave an appropriate answer. The entire thing would be best, but at least our living quarters has to have the most intense lockdown we can manage. Use manufactured android Ts, drones, anything you can find. Our goal is to make sure nobody enters or exits the facility after today. This startled everyone on board. It was much too harsh of a lockdown. It felt specifically that way to Trunks, because according to his understanding Raditz should be able to handle any sneak attack now that he was told he will have to face one. Sorry if it sounds rude, but just keeping her in lockdown should be enough, right? Before Pai could get depressed again, Raditz stopped Trunks's words. No, it won't be enough. I am certain Pai won't harm me. There is zero chance of her attacking me. There has to be something else involved. And if this something can force Pai to attack me, it can force any one of us to do the same. We have to be prepared. Sniff. Bang. A crying Pai tackled Raditz into a hug and stopped his words with her lips. She was just so happy that even with all the signs pointing towards her, Raditz believes her. There was never a doubt in his mind. Thought Pai. Raditz also got out of the surprise of the sudden hug and patted her head with a smile. Trunks saw the entire thing and his words got stuck in his throat. The life he lived forced him to look at the bad side of every situation. This amount of trust was something he simply was unable to have, even for his mother and Gohan, especially if it concerned his life. Mr. Raditz is truly one of a kind. Trunks thought, and he wasn't alone. Everyone in this jet thought so as they smiled and watched Raditz rub Pai's hair as she cuddled onto him. Meanwhile the kind king himself was thinking, she is fine after all. Hey, never hurts to check. Tactile telepathy for the win. Advanced chapters ahead on Patreon. Chapter 88 Perfection. 2 days passed by quickly. The entire time Trunks and Violet roamed around Capsule Corporation. He was taking in the intact buildings and happy people, and more importantly, spending quality time with his mother. Raditz and Bulma themselves were working tirelessly on the time machine, reverse engineering the entire thing from the clues left by future Bulma. And the last of the group, Pai was swimming in a large pool-like bathtub. The massive thing was indeed a bathtub and not a pool, because this structure was built inside a bathroom. A bathroom so big that it might as well be an entire hotel floor, and this was just one room in a private entertainment area of Capsule Corporation. Splash. Taking her head out of the water, Pai fixed her hair and sighed. Swimming in real water always helped her relax, and God, she needed to relax after all this tension. I really hope everything turns out okay. I am supposed to kill him by now, but I feel fine. That boy must be a liar. Bzzzzzzz. 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 The sudden buzzing sensation from her wrist had Pai's eyes shrink. Her blood instantly ran cold after that, because this was coming from a device each one of them had strapped to themselves. And a buzz on it meant only one thing. Someone broke in. Pai's heart was beating rapidly, but her first thought was swimming towards her daughter, who was sleeping in her own small tub of water. Mama. Jin woke up from the temperature difference as she was quickly taken out of the water. She mumbled a few words before freezing up and silently sticking to her mom. Pai could feel her daughter trembling against her chest. She didn't know if this was because her mom was scared or Jin had sensed something she didn't. Swimming to the middle of the pool, Pai hugged Jin and raised her head. She was searching around the room for the thing that broke in. Damn it, why is this place so big but it doesn't even have a cave system? Pai cursed Bulma's house. She preferred the wild oceans much more than this. At least she could have escaped there. Now she was stuck waiting for her and her daughter's demise. Why trap themselves in one luxurious box if one break-in meant no chance of escape? Stupid humans, especially stupid Bulma. Asterisk snap. Asterisk. The door to the bathroom suddenly slid open and Pai's fist tightened in fear. Someone was here. Step. But with the very next look her rapidly beating heart settled down in place. Raditz? Why are you here? I felt the vibration going off. Why didn't you disable the system? Raditz looked confused for a split second but smiled and started walking over to Pai. The system? Oh yes, I was trying to check if it works correctly or not, if there are any bugs I have to fix. Pai breathed a sigh of relief as she watched Raditz slowly make his way towards them. You won't believe how scared I was. See, even Jin is shaking. Looking at her still terrified daughter, Pai attempted to console her. It's okay Jin, it's just daddy you. By now Jin had started to tear up and was beginning to struggle. Pai didn't understand what had happened to her daughter. They were fine, it was a false alarm. Looking up from her daughter she tried to ask her husband what was wrong with their daughter. Kaya. But finding Raditz who was silently floating behind her, Pai let out a startled scream. Then she sighed and patted her chest with relief. She almost got a heart attack. Don't scare me like that. Raditz smirked and spoke with a large smile on his face. Sorry about that? Huffing in mock anger as her husband obviously wasn't sorry and was just pulling her tail, Pai turned around and began swimming towards the edge of the pool. She wanted to keep Jin back into her little pool but Jin started crying loudly and was struggling intensively right now. So much so that Pai was having a hard time keeping her in control. Jin, what is wrong with you honey? Jin was desperately trying to shake herself out of Pai's grip. Even her hair had begun to float and a thin layer of ki was starting to burst out of her small body. AAA. Pai Pai cried out in pain as Jin had finally gotten out of her grip forcefully and tackled her into the water, both of them falling towards the side. Just when Pai Pai wanted to scold Jin for misbehaving, boom! A large amount of water splashed at the position she was just at. Although there was water all over the air, Pai Pai's natural senses let her see through it. And she saw something which made her eyes go wide. Why? Asked Pai Pai with confusion and hurt, because it was Raditz who had just attacked the place she was at a moment ago. Jin's tantrum had somehow shifted her from her previous position and his attack fell on the water. The large amount of splashing water told Pai Pai clearly, if this had hit her she would have been dead. Raditz himself slowly turned towards her and didn't seem to mind his missed shot too much, but by now he had shifted his attention towards the crying Jin, who was still attempting to pull her mother away. Nice reflexes, commented Raditz with an eerie smile. Looking at Raditz's killing intention shifting towards their daughter, Pai Pai finally began to realize something was wrong. No, get back. Smiling widely, Raditz once again began slowly making his way towards them. Why Pai Pai? I am just playing around. I wouldn't have hurt you. It was a joke dash. Splash. A solid tail smack on the water before him had Raditz pause, but his smile never left his face. You aren't Raditz. Picking up her daughter, Pai Pai glared at the lookalike and raised her nails up. Hissing sounds escaped her throat as her predator instinct started to kick in. Get out now, or I'll kill you. Ha 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 ha. Smirk. Me dying. I wonder about that. Raditz's sudden laughter didn't please Pai Pai, nor did the way this thing just licked its lips. Her confidence was wavering. The licking of lips reminded her of how she had supposedly killed Raditz in the future and left after licking her lips. This was something neither her nor Raditz did. If she had any suspicion before this, she didn't have it anymore. This thing is not Raditz. Watching the floating Raditz almost fearlessly coming in her range, Pai Pai attacked with her full 110 power, all concentrate in her nails. Snap. But Raditz * caught her hand with ease and looked at her nails with narrow eyes. The sharpest biological material. Fancy, but you aren't the only one. Thanks to you, I have it too. Raising his other hand, Raditz showed it to Pai Pai. It had sharp green nails now visible in place of the previous normal ones. Pai Pai had a bad feeling about this. This creature's words had a kind of pride to it. He felt like a creature who almost considered himself perfect. She was against a total lunatic. Advanced chapters ahead on Patreon. Chapter 89. Cell. Watching the sharp green nails growing on Raditz's hand, Pai Pai clutched Jin tightly. The only thing she had in mind right now was to get Jin to safety, but the way she was trapped by the thing, it didn't look like either of them were going to make it out alive. It must have been this creature which impersonated me and killed Raditz in the future, so he is here to kill me now and replace me. And if future was anything to go by, she will now perish in his hands, and he will use her face to get closer to Raditz, finishing him off. Ha, what happened? Why the glum face? No more threats? How pitiful. You put up a much bigger fight back then compared to now. The creature spoke in a raspy voice, which had Pai Pai confused even more, because from the words of this guy, he didn't kill her the first time, so he is from the future too. But how? What's the matter? No more quips. You were much more fun back then, you know. No words at all before dying now? Know how Raditz is going to save you? Ha 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 ha. Pai Pai still kept quiet but gritted her teeth in frustration. This monster was just playing with her now. Well, she won't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. You are boring. What a pity. Raditz had a frown on his face as he spat this sentence out. Then a thrilled smile returned to his face as he picked up his free hand and took it back, aiming it at mother and daughter together. Looks like you truly have nothing left to say. Okay, I understand. Goodbye. Watching the attack rushing towards her and her daughter, Pai Pai glared with fury. The creature figured she still didn't want to give him the satisfaction of a reaction even in death, but he missed one crucial thing. Jin didn't have a crying face anymore either, and Pai Pai's bracelet was buzzing in a certain way since the moment he had set foot in the room. I won. * bang. The words got stuck in his throat and his entire vision blanked out. His hazy mind seems to have registered a throbbing pain on his chin. But even all that was overtaken by the intense pain which emerged from his neck. He felt like he just took a planet to his chin. Boom. While the creature himself attempted to understand what was happening with his clouded mind, Pai Pai saw everything clearly. You are here. Raditz. Quickly hugging her husband who had just burst through the pool's floor and torpedo punched the monster in his chin, Pai Pai thanked the sea. Jin also tightly clutched Raditz's armor. She was finally feeling safe. Turning towards the mother and daughter, Raditz gave a soft smile. Sorry, I came as soon as I found that this wasn't a technical fault. Turning and looking at the body of Raditz crashing down to the ground, he narrowed his eyes. So I was right, something weird is going on. Pai Pai nodded and quickly told what she had heard the creature say, and while she started talking, Trunks had flown in with Bulma and Violet as well. He told me that I had put up a much harder fight before this. I think he is also from the future. He talks like he has done all this before. Hearing these words, Trunks immediately denied the possibility of such a thing. He didn't bring anyone with him and there was only one time machine. That's impossible. I came back alone, I swear. This outburst didn't have much effect on Raditz, because he knew although the boy meant well, he was simply not knowledgeable enough about this subject. Trunks's words were naive at best. Raditz knew that the boy barely understood time travel. Even in the original there were two time machines, one old and rotting, used by Cell, and one brand new, used by Trunks. Yet both were the same time machine. This was how time travel messed with one's mind if one didn't understand how it worked. Thankfully, after all his research with Bulma, Raditz knew what he was dealing with. Jin, can you let go, sweetie? Daddy will be right back. You. Raditz softly had Jin release him, then started walking towards the creature who was beginning to stir awake. A hardy guy for sure, this punch had all of his base strength behind it. Poof. Stopping mid-walk, Raditz stared at the smoke that was now covering the creature. This smoke was familiar to him, because this was something he could do as well. The transformation technique. Bulma exclaimed. She figured she was looking at some kind of android built to look like Raditz, or maybe there was a Raditz clone at play here. But this was a totally different set of events. Trunks seemed shocked by it as well. He had never seen this creature before. In fact, Raditz himself was shocked, not because of the transformation technique, but by the guy who just used it. Is that Cell? The hell is he doing here? Wait, if he says he has done it before, so that's supposed to be future Cell, is he here to repeat what he did before and take me out the same way again? Many thoughts spun around in Raditz's mind, but externally he was stable. Folding his hands, he stood straight and gave imperfect Cell the time to catch his bearings, all the while looking intimidating. He needed some answers, and he was going to get them out of Cell. Huff. Raditz. You are just as strong as the data suggests. Cell spoke while panting softly. Base Raditz was approaching Super Saiyan levels of strength now. Sure, it was fresh Namek Saga Super Saiyan, but his punch still wasn't anything to scoff at for imperfect Cell. Getting up with a bit of a struggle, Cell's eyes looked around the room discreetly. He was outmatched against Trunks and Raditz, and his data explicitly told him to take down Raditz first and foremost. So he wanted to make a run for it. He had succeeded just fine in the future, but seems like Trunks's intervention messed things up. But Cell's discreet actions were as clear as day to Raditz, who knew of the creature's shifty personality before completing its evolution. Bulma, lock everything down completely, activate every android T in store. Trunks, make sure he doesn't slip away and protect everyone. Meanwhile, I have some questions for Mr. Giving a creepy smile to Raditz, Cell said. Cell, you can call me Cell. Nodding his head, Raditz also smiled at Cell. I see, Cell, I have mostly put together your story. Tell me if I missed something, okay? Cell frowned but stood still. He was still thinking of slipping away and was now targeting Bulma, Violet, and Pai Pai for his hostages. So he played along, in hopes that Raditz and Trunks will let their guard down. You come from the future, where you killed Pai Pai, replaced her using the transformation technique, and then killed me. Am I correct in assuming that? Same creepy smile plastered on his face, Cell laughed. She was just a means to an end. You wouldn't have doubted my nails even if I approached you as her. Not everything can cut through Yusin's skin. You were highest priority. With you out of the equation, everything would have been easy. Shrugging at the praise, which was disguised self-praise for someone like Cell, Raditz kept going and confirmed his theory with Cell. I see, so even after succeeding in the future, something didn't go the way you needed it to, so you wanted the redo. That's why you returned to the past, but you didn't think we would take measures against you because of Trunks. And thus you failed. Giving the half-breed a sly look, Cell said mockingly. He was barely a threat when I came to the past. He still isn't. How do I say this? You aren't the sharpest tool in the box, Trunks. I didn't think his vague information would alert you on a possible attack. If anything, I figured it would have made it easier for me. With you doubting each other, I would have an easier time getting the kill. Clench. Trunks heard the valiant mockery and clenched his fist. He was pretty upset that the monster was right. If things had gone Trunks's way, Pai Pai would have been driven out and Cell would have impersonated someone else to get the job done. Only because of Raditz did this not happen. Trunks was ashamed. He had a lot to learn. I see. Now one last question, Cell. What do you want to do? What was it that didn't work out in the future, that you had to make a trip to the past for? Inwardly clenching his muscles, Cell smiled widely. Oh, that? It was dash. Die. Rushing towards Bulma, who was farthest from anyone strong, Cell pointed his tail at her. He was going to hold her hostage or absorb her outright. Maybe then he'll be able to convince Raditz to let him go, because killing him would kill Bulma too. Bang! But the sudden pain on the top of his head once again reminded him why Jero had made taking out Raditz the top priority. This simply wasn't a fighter he could win against in his imperfect form. Damn it! Advanced chapters ahead on Patreon. Chapter 90 Raditz vs Imperfect Cell. All Cell was feeling right now was pain. His head was being dragged through the metal walls of Capsule Corporation and he was powerless to stop it. Cell was frustrated and angry. He had Raditz's genes inside of him too. Why was he so much weaker than Raditz? What Cell didn't know was that the genes he had were taken from the ground where old Raditz died. So what he had in him wasn't the legendary Super Saiyan's genes, but the low-class warrior Raditz's genes. Boom. Finally Cell's body had stopped being dragged through walls and was now thrown upwards, shooting straight through clouds and towards outer space. But Cell wasn't grateful for getting out of the death grip he was being held in. No, he was thrown with such force that he needed to use all his energy to stop his momentum. Or he'll really get thrown into space. Sure, he had King Cold's genes in him from the spacecraft which took back the Z-fighters, but he would rather not be thrown to space anyway. Aiaiaiaic. Forcibly stopping his momentum mid-air, Cell trembled and glared at the fast-approaching Raditz. Those yellow eyes were really pissing him off. Whoosh. A solid layer of yellow ki was emanating from Raditz as he rushed up to Cell and stood before him, floating in mid-air. That green body is definitely from Piccolo, isn't it? I can sense so many of us in you. Me, brother, Gohan, King Cold, Piccolo, Tien, even Pai Pai and Puer, how did you do that? It's a pretty cool trick. Hearing Raditz's valiant mockery, veins popped up on Cell's forehead. It is not a trick. I am the perfect android, built from the genes of the best warriors on Earth. And you? You stand no chance against me. You are just one part of me. I am better than you. You hear me? Yelling angrily, Cell attempted to rush towards Raditz. Snap. But was caught by the tail, which was trying to stab Raditz from a hidden spot. This really caused Cell to change his face. His actions were once again seen through. He was in terrible danger, wasn't he? Oh yes, terrible danger indeed. Now you said you have Piccolo's genes inside you, right? Let's test that claim. How good is your regeneration factor? Panic spread across Cell's face as Raditz smirked and tightened his grip on Cell's tail. For your sake, Cell, I hope it's up to mark. You are definitely going to need it, Raditz declared while charging a yellow key blast point blank at Cell. Let go. Bang, bang, bang. Continuous attacks were falling on Raditz's body, but all of them were being taken head-on by him without so much as a scratch. He stood like an externally stable rock. Cell felt as if he was a mortal man trying to move a mountain. He now knew, he was utterly and completely outmatched. Damn it. Let go. Bang. Another swift punch was thrown Raditz's way, but this time Cell's eyes shone with a glint and changed the punch to a hand knife midway. His sharp nails pointing towards Raditz's heart. All this rage was faked. All of it was done to make way for this one attack. Now that Raditz was thinking his attacks don't work, he can't guard against a sudden one which does. I win. Snap. Eyes going wide with terror, Cell found his hand being caught midway by Raditz's monkey tail, not being able to move a step forward. This finally got Cell to lose his cool for real. How did you know? Smirking a haughty smile, Raditz poured the final bit of ki into his charging ki blast. I was never careless, Cell. Do you really think I'll forget what had killed me in the first place? I was entertaining you, needed a while to charge this enough, you see. Now then, thanks for you help. Goodbye. Similar words which Cell had spoken to Pai Pai before were returned by Raditz. But Cell wasn't in the mood to appreciate the irony. He had much bigger problems to deal with. His death, for instance. No wait dash. Boom. No. Cell screamed with pain. He felt each one of his cell getting incinerated. He was trying desperately to wiggle out of the death grip, but the high temperature made it impossible. Cell could feel it. All of his body was disintegrating, and the next second. Where am I? He found himself in a place with lots of floating clouds, some orch-looking men and a really large man sitting on a desk, who was looking down at him with a frown. Let's see. Cell, muttered the large man as he began flipping through his book. Cell was surprised but also cautious on how he got here, so he took a step back and asked dangerously. Who are you? Why am I here? The large man looked up and said in a loud voice. Be quiet, you are dead, you are being judged right now. What? Immediately Cell attempted to make a run for it. Catch him. The large man, King Yema, yelled loudly, and utter chaos began in the other world. But that wasn't Raditz's concern. He was in charge of the mortal world's Earth. Let King Yema handle the other world. Not even one cell remained, right? Good. Although he breathed a sigh of relief for now, Raditz was starting to have a headache thinking about the disgustingly powerful enemies he will have to face soon. Atomizing won't always work against enemies. It might work for Cell right now, but it's not going to work against Bu. The only reason Goku could kill Bu was because Kid Bu was purely evil, and Spirit Bomb counters that particularly. No other versions of Bu could be killed by the Spirit Bomb. Even when burned to atoms and scattered in the wind like smoke, Bu still reforms just fine. The only way Raditz could even think of killing Bu without him going Kid Bu was Hakai, another skill Raditz didn't have. Fantastic, muttered Raditz while rolling his eyes, but he soon let it go. His immediate problem were the androids. Even Cell would have been a really huge problem if things didn't go the way they did. And this was just imperfect future Cell. There is still present Cell around. Trunks had killed him by mistake in the original. But to do that I have to find Gero's lab first. The man has managed to hide himself quite deeply. It's almost impossible to find his tracks. Raditz frowned as he wondered what he should do. There truly wasn't much he could do about it really. The Dragon Balls were an option, but it was recharging from Bulma's previous wish. And even if they find Gero's lab, Raditz was sure the man won't be caught until he doesn't bother running away because of overconfidence. Gero was a very cunning man. It will take the supreme belief he has on his own creations to stop him from running away. Huff. Well, one problem solved at least. It's a good thing Cell wasn't anything above imperfect Cell. Or I'll be in for a hard fight. It wouldn't have been this easy. Whoosh. Flying back towards the Capsule Corporation, Raditz was thinking how terrible it would have been if Cell had actually managed to absorb even one android. Semi-perfect Cell, perfect Cell, and God forbid super perfect Cell. Any of them would have been much harder to take on for Raditz right now. He might be capable of growing stronger as he fights, but even that has limits. If Goku straight away went blue against base Broly, no matter how awesome Broly was, he will die instantly. That was something Raditz wanted to avoid. People like Cell and Bu will take every chance there was to finish off their enemies. And if the future androids were anything to go by, their personalities will be twisted beyond saving too. Raditz needed to take this seriously or he might actually start having problems. Advanced chapters ahead on Patreon. Chapter 91 Instant Transmission. When Raditz returned to Capsule Corporation, the damaged walls were being meticulously repaired. Cell's beatdown had done quite a number on the building's integrity. Multiple drones were working in a synchronized fashion to fix the broken chunks of wall. Raditz? What happened? Exclaimed Pai Pai the very second that Raditz returned. This was a big deal for them as this was the threat that would have killed Raditz and her. Raditz, who just touched down and was about to answer, was sadly stopped from doing so by another event. Whoosh. Hey, I just felt my key signature appear and then disappear. What's going on? Gaku asked happily as soon as he popped into existence, as if just coming out of thin air was the most normal thing to do. The only difference from his normal posture was that 2 of his fingers were connected to his forehead. Oh yes, that was an enemy from the future, but before that, did you just teleport? Asked Raditz with a curious look to him, in response to which Gaku grinned and showed a victory pose. This is instant transmission. I can go anywhere as long as I can sense someone's key. Watch. Whoosh. Again vanishing out of thin air, Gaku left the room silent, silence which Nappa broke. Teleportation? Kakarote's gotten really strong. This was a serious praise from Nappa. He was a massive man and thus fully aware how important movement abilities were in a fight. Bulma also nodded, but her thoughts were on a different path. She was wondering if she should research this and if this teleportation can be used across timelines. Because if that were to happen, Raditz won't need a time machine to travel through timelines. I'll look into it. If it's working with space-time principles and not just a fake teleportation, then I might be able to think of a way. Just when Bulma was thinking of creating the most busted technique in existence. Whoosh. Gaku returned, but this time around he had Rashi's sunglasses on his face and another grin to show how much fun he was having doing this. Nice, those are the master's glasses? That's pretty good, Kakarote. You have become really strong. Hearing his brother's heartfelt praise, Gaku removed the sunglasses and gave a happy smile to Raditz, which soon morphed into a serious look. But you have become strong too. I don't think I can defeat you even with Super Saiyan. This was concluded very seriously by Gaku. The man was anything but absolutely serious when it came to things like this. This however shocked Nappa. His eyes popped and he exclaimed out. What? Super Saiyan? Kakarote, you too? Rubbing the back of his head, Gaku smiled and laughed merrily, then explained how it happened. I managed to do it when I was training at Yadrit. Gohan mastered his transformation too. Now he can transform whenever he wants. Although Gaku's words were basic and didn't put much weight onto the process, Nappa still knew how hard it could be to transform. Kakarote being able to do this meant he naturally understood Super Saiyan and had the necessary requirements to become one. Yadrit definitely helped, but how much was Yadrit and how much was Kakarote himself? That Nappa didn't know. That's amazing, Kakarote. You make me so proud. Knock. But Raditz's sudden punch to Gaku's head was showing he was anything but proud. Ouch. That hurt? What was that for? Twitching his lips, Raditz snorted lightly. He still couldn't understand how Gaku was being happy about this, yet he was taking his disease so lightly. In Gaku's mind there wasn't even one mention of his disease. Kakarote, where is your medicine? Cringing from the question, Gaku laughed in an embarrassed fashion. I forgot where I kept it. Ha 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 ha. Clenching his fist because this was to be expected from Gaku, Raditz shook his head and arranged Gaku's schedule for him. You are careless, Kakarote. Fine, Trunks gave us the recipe of the medicine. Bulma will make one and give it to Gohan. I won't be there to keep tabs on you, so you better survive when I return. You hear me, Kakarote? Looking at Raditz with a confused expression, Gaku asked. Huh? Where are you going? This felt like a good time for Trunks to cut in, so he did just that. He wanted to talk to Gaku, the second guy who could have saved the future if he was to survive. King is going with me. He is helping me against the androids of the future. When Trunks let Gaku know their plans, he exclaimed from shock. Hey, no fair? You get to fight them so soon. Trunks' situation could be described right now as being tongue-tied. The androids, which were a constant nightmare for him, was fun for Gaku. Even Raditz didn't seem to be too bothered by them. Trunks didn't know if this was a matter of self-confidence or the brothers were they truly this free in their lives. Whatever it was, Trunks knew he could never have such an attitude towards his life. For this alone he respected them both. What's so unfair about this, Kakarote? You got your training on Yadrit. I get to fight the future androids. This is completely fair. And I am not telling you due to nothing. You need to seriously train. The guy I just killed had amazing potential and he exists in the past too. And most importantly, it's only a matter of time before androids attack the Earth. Gesturing towards his family, Raditz said lightly. I hope you can protect them when I am not around. I don't want to come back after fixing the future, just to see a broken past. Seeing Raditz so serious about this, Gaku also gave him a serious smile. No other words were needed between the brothers, a silent conversation had already taken place. And with that, Raditz was confident enough to go to the future. He didn't have any worries about his family with Gaku and Nappa around. Oh yes, before I forget, Kakarote, show me your Super Saiyan once. Although a bit confused, Gaku obliged and narrowed his eyes. Whoosh! A burst of golden yellow ki later, Gaku had turned Super Saiyan, and he had done so with ease. Nodding his head at Gaku's transformation, Raditz figured it was a good time to let Gaku know the road forward. Now how to go about that he himself wasn't too sure, but Gaku being Gaku, will figure it out sooner or later. As I thought, Kakarote, this isn't the limit of Super Saiyan's boost. I can sense some volatility in the transformation. You have almost reached the end of your normal strength growth. You need to take Super Saiyan further if you want to become stronger. Gaku was surprised hearing that. He didn't know he was reaching a limit. Grabbing his chin, he wondered out loud. You know, I had a feeling for a while, I guess that confirms it. Ha ha ha. Gaku laughed heartily. He wasn't sad that he was reaching a limit, but he was happy that he had a possible way forward using Super Saiyan. This sheer optimistic attitude was contagious, and thus it removed the last of Raditz's worries about leaving his family behind to go and visit the future. As long as Gaku lives, no matter what danger comes he will rise up and turn that situation around. Advanced chapters ahead on Patreon. Give it a review if you got the time, peeps. Helps the story gain more traction. Chapter 92 Vacation. A date was finally decided for the future time travel. Trunks was happy with the arrangement as well. A real chance to finish off the androids was always good news in his books. Meanwhile Raditz was finishing off some important business on Earth too. All had to be in order before making his future trip. Whoosh. He was currently flying through the skies and was just out of Furry's office. The incoming android threat was something Raditz had decided to inform the man on. Although Raditz didn't personally act most of the time, he was still the ruler of Earth, so lowering the casualties was his duty and he wasn't going to skimp on it. Now that Furry is aware of what's to come, he'll make sure no funny business happens when I am away. And in case of an event where I don't return, Mr. Briefs will take my position. The preparations and countermeasures are mostly done too. Raditz mumbled while flying through some trees. These weren't independent trees either, they were a part of the forest he had begun his new life in. And now that he was going away who knows for how long, he was here to say goodbye to his family. Whoosh. Thump. Dropping before a clearing which had a waterfall behind it, Raditz smiled. Home sweet home. With another smile he happily approached the waterfall. Splash. Landing inside the knee-deep water he resisted the waterfall's force and went through it, entering the cave house that had kept him warm during his most crucial times. I missed this is strangely comforting, said Raditz to no one in particular. This reminded him of the time he had just arrived in this world. That was a time when nothing was certain, he was weak and most importantly, he was alone. But now, although this place remained the same he had changed, he was an active part of this world. He was no longer weak and had a large family to call his own too. Funny, how I'll be seeing you in a few days, but it'll be the future that time around, the future where everything has gone wrong. I am dead, my family is dead and I have lost everything, only Bulma remains, struggling to live on. The future Raditz was going to was his original future, at least it should have been if Trunks didn't return, diverging the timeline. In reality, future Trunks' timeline is the main timeline of Dragon Ball world. Gaku's adventures beyond the Frieza saga take place in the new divergent timeline created by Bulma. She was the driving force behind the entire Dragon Ball franchise. Her and Gaku kick-started the story and they are the ones keeping this universe alive. It's crazy how one silly adventure can change the entire world. Just goes to show the charm of Dragon Ball, huh? While reminiscing about his old world, Raditz decided to take a nap in his cave. This was his home and he wanted to take a break from all the action. Tucked away in a corner of the world, there couldn't be a better place to take his well-deserved rest. Shuffle. Dusting away at the makeshift bed of dry leaves, Raditz cleaned it as good as he could. This was the fruit of all his efforts back then. It's still here, ready to be used once more. And he did just that. With a sigh of relief he sat down on the bed, removed his shoes, armor, and wrist guards, then proceeded to lie down and relax. Slowly sleep took him over and he was out cold. Tick, tick, tick. Water drops kept falling in a corner of the cave, signifying the passage of time. The morning sun has gone through today's motions and was ready to set once more. It was almost night when Raditz finally opened his eyes. A few distant bird calls had awakened him. Is it night? Yawn. Getting up from the four-finger thick leaf bed, Raditz rubbed his long mane, getting the dust out of his hair. These were the normal results of sleeping in the wild, he just had to deal with it. Suppose I'll get dressed later, it's pretty late, might as well say goodbye to them. Wearing only his grey pants, Raditz walked out of the cave. The water was hitting his bare body, but he didn't attempt to keep himself dry. Why bother when he was going to go big? It's a full moon tonight, murmured Raditz as he looked up, and simply gave into the raw instinctual urge of a Saiyan. He might no longer need the moon to go great ape, but he could still use it to trigger the state. And he did just that. He simply let nature take its course. Thump, thump, thump. Loud heartbeats echoed inside Raditz's chest. His body was filled with strength and his eyes had slowly started turning red. Growl. A loud growl echoed throughout the dense forest, reaching every nook and cranny of the place. Squeak. Altering everyone living in this piece of territory, that their king was back. Squeak. Roar. Chirp. Many animals began to call back in response. The forest, which was about to finish its workings for the day, was suddenly alive once more. The activity reached such a peak that it even alerted the scientists of Earth, but that story was for another time. Currently multiple cries were sent out from every corner of the forest. All creatures were responding to their king's call. It was a show of strength and it was a show of support for said strength. The creatures of the forest told Raditz in clear words, no matter how much time passes, he would always be the king of this forest. Thank you, for being there for me. Roar. Another titanic roar shook the forest and a cacophony of animal calls responded back to him. Not every animal might understand the feelings behind Raditz's roar, but even so, their response let Raditz know they considered him a member of their pack, if not the outright leader. Sometimes animals truly were the best companions. He hoped these guys had survived the androids. They probably survived. Android 16 is an animal lover, Android 17 will be a forest ranger in the future, and Android 18, well, she likes Krillin. Which is weird, but hey, she shouldn't be totally crazy even in the future, unless Jero managed to change their core personality completely. Raditz thought to himself, then decided to end his chat with the members of his kingdom, the very first kingdom he had conquered. Growl. Another low growl escaped from the Uzura's mouth, which again resulted in a large number of low calls being emitted from various corners of the forest. This was his goodbye for now. He had one more thing to do before the decided time arrives. After returning to the cave house, Raditz dressed himself and put everything back in place, all for the day he returns once more. It's time to visit the Satans again. Videl has been wanting to meet for quite a while. Putting 2 fingers on his forehead, Raditz concentrated on the family's key. This was instant transmission. Raditz was the perfection, an even bigger genius than Bu. Copying techniques by seeing it once was easy for him now. Satan's out, but he's on the way. I'll just catch up with Miguel and Videl until then. Homing in on the nature key he had given Miguel, Raditz initiated instant transmission. Swish. And appeared behind Miguel, who was cooking dinner while humming a soft tone. You sacred me, honey. Miguel let out a startled yelp when she turned around, then gave a pout. Keeping the food on low heat, she started talking while ignoring Raditz's twitching eyes, who then had to cut in himself, lest she keeps talking all night long and gives him a bunch of tasks meant for Satan. Mrs. Satan, please look carefully, I am not Mark. Stopping dead in her tracks, Miguel's face slowly turned red. She immediately bowed after that. Sorry, it's just that Mark walks around transformed all day long, so I thought, said Miguel while fumbling her words. Raditz just shook his head. Instant transmission was certainly a risky technique to use. Advanced chapters ahead on Patreon. Chapter 93 Future. After solving some misunderstandings plaguing the Satan household, Raditz peacefully spent his night there. After all, this was his villa. The very next morning he visited Scale's family, inspired young sharpener to train, found that Erase's family are their neighbors, gave them all autographs and all around had fun messing around. And just like that, his semi-vacation was over and the fated day had finally arrived. Mr. Raditz, is this really fine? Asked an unsure Trunks while looking at a tiny Raditz standing beside him. That was Raditz transformed using the transformation technique, and it was an important step in using the time machine. Not understanding how cute he looked while the size of a pinky, Raditz replied in a professional voice. If I don't do this, the weight would go beyond the machine's handling capacity. Future Bulma managed to pack a lot of stuff in, but the weight limit isn't something she actively worked on. Shrugging his shoulders, Raditz gave an explanation for this behavior as well. She likely didn't have the resources to continue messing around anymore. Shame really, that she had to go through all this. A short silence spread across the morning skies. This was a silence of agreement. The time travel was taking place early in the day, so only Nappa and Trunks were around. Raditz had already said his goodbyes to his family the night before. Mr. Raditz, I am sorry. I couldn't protect everyone. The tiny Raditz smiled and patted Trunks' shoe to console him. It's fine, you did your best and now it's time for me to do my best. This isn't a soldier's job anymore, it's the king's duty. Nappa wholeheartedly agreed to this statement. The queen was such a great person, those androids should be damned, and what better way to save the queen than by the hands of the king. Click. In the meantime, Raditz had activated the remote of the time machine and the thing was slowly beginning to open up, silently filling itself with past air that will soon be released into the future. It fully opened its doors. Swish. The tiny Raditz jumped off the ground and landed straight into the cockpit, taking a seat on the top of the backrest. Trunks silently gulped and walked in as well. He might not be showing it, but he was fearful of returning and finding that his adoptive mother was gone. Raditz might rage out and destroy the androids as well as the galaxy if that was to happen. What's the hold up, Trunks? Let's go. Not knowing how scary his image was in Trunks' mind, Raditz told Trunks to snap out of his indecision and get going. Alright. Exclaiming involuntarily, Trunks quickly pressed the button and the time machine closed its glass shell. Gulping hard, Trunks prayed Bulma would be safe and kick-started the machine. Whoom. The contraption began floating upwards and soon stopped around 7 feet away from the ground. Take care, King. Nappa saluted Raditz and Raditz nodded back. Then the next second the time machine vanished from the face of the earth. He's gone? To the future, huh? Chewing his words, Nappa silently flew out of Capsule Corporation. He was going to meet Kakarot and learn the difference between Super Saiyan and his new form. Because before going to the future, Raditz did one thing for Nappa. He sat him down and walked around him for a few hours, before putting his hands up and pointing towards Nappa for another dozen hours. Which somehow seems to have done something to him. Nappa didn't know how, but he had powered up beyond what he thought was possible. This potential unlock thing King learned from that old name Kian is great. I feel so strong already. It must be the King's modifications. No way that old guru could have made me so powerful. Nappa believed that to be the case and he wasn't far from the truth. Just like Kami's creation beam was similar to the Supreme Kai's creation technique, so was Guru's potential unlock. The technique was quite similar to old Kai's potential unlock. Although Guru couldn't use the technique its full potential, due to being extremely old, but Raditz was young and he understood as soon as he found this method, that he could take it beyond a simple touch-based boost. Ultimate Nappa, that's got a nice ring to it. This was the name his king gave him after the ritual. He felt that it fit really well with his new power-up. What he didn't know was he was indeed worthy of this name. He had basically gotten the old Kai's potential unlock due to Raditz amplifying the technique. For all intents and purposes Nappa was the first Ultimate Saiyan. Even if he doesn't unlock Super Saiyan for some reason, he can still get stronger in his base, basically tapping into Super Saiyan's powers without going Super Saiyan. Whoosh! Flying at vast speeds Nappa rushed through the skies. He could sense the energy signature of Kakarot, and he had a feeling that Kakarot was currently transformed. So I am stronger than Kakarot again, huh? Ha ha ha. Nappa laughed loudly. He hadn't unlocked Super Saiyan but he had enough S-cells for it. Using this the potential unlock had pushed him all the up to Goku's level. As long as he keeps training, he could always maintain this lead. Just like Ultimate Gohan was stronger than Super Saiyan 3 Goku, Ultimate Nappa was now stronger than Super Saiyan Goku. As Nappa keeps tapping into more and more of Super Saiyan's amplification, his power will keep on increasing with time. Ha ha ha, it's great. Oh, before I forget, there's some work for that Satan guy too. Let's go after some hard training. Satan can wait. Unknowingly Nappa had arrived at a turning point in his life, and this one decision of his was the trigger. If he had visited Satan right away, he would have never met his life partner. But from this one act of pushing back the meeting, he would meet the latest challenger of Raditz, defeating her instantly, and somehow against all odds, they will manage to click. Nappa and Ranfan was a shock Raditz would later arrive to see, but that was for the future. And now, in the future, swish. A time machine reappeared in the garden of Capsule Corporation. This was the spot it had previously vanished in, and this was the spot it had reappeared back in. Zoom. The glass covering slowly opened and the past air escaped the machine, mirroring its future counterpart. Poof. Transforming back into his real body, Raditz jumped out amongst the smoke and escaping air, gently touching down on the out-of-care garden. Mr. Briefs and Panchi's key is gone, Bulma is still alive, a handful of key signatures are spread across the world. This is indeed a doomsday scenario. I don't think Gero had this in mind while creating the androids. Gero's main purpose was killing Goku, not destroying the entire population. He certainly didn't mind doing it, but that wasn't his main goal. The androids might have been overcorrected is the conclusion Raditz arrived at. He had a lot of experience working with Gero's systems, and this was a consistent bug in his design. Maybe this was the reason the androids went crazy in this timeline. In the past timeline they might have been activated ahead of time, due to the Z fighters almost rushing into Gero's lab. But here, he had all the time in the world to program them, and he created monsters. Still, there was one silver lining go this situation. If this was a case of overcorrection on Gero's part, Raditz could reverse engineer the androids and fix them. If he can do this, the Earth might regain some of its defenders again. Too many of those have died recently. A/N. Advanced chapters ahead on Patreon. Chapter 94. Future Bulma. Trunks climbed out of the time machine and put it back into its capsule. He then gestured to Raditz and led him through the hallways of Capsule Corporation. Although this was essentially Raditz's palace, but this was an unknown future and a few things have changed to guard against the androids. Trunks showing him around would save time and help preserve traps. They were poor right now, the less traps they used up the better. That material can be used in another place. Step. This is a laser corridor. Even Mr. Gohan was injured when he wasn't powered up. Trunks explained while taking Raditz through a hidden pathway away from the corridor. The corridor was a trap and a deadly one at that. Raditz didn't say a word and quietly walked along. Currently he was constantly scanning the world and trying to find survivors. And he had finally found the one he wanted to. Satan, he's still alive, this will be easy then. Everyone on Earth can die, but Satan can't. That was his special ability, the ability of luck and deception. This almost functioned like a Dragonball wish. Maybe someone jokingly wished for a random person to be extremely successful without having the required skills. Or, it's just Satan who's that good. Either way Raditz found the man he needed to rile everyone up. As long as that guy is on board, he'll manage everyone's emotions. The Satan here lived alone. There was no Miguel or Vidal's key around him. Both of them had died it seems, just like his own family's key was absent. Scale, Sharpener, Ruli, Ereza, her family, everyone he even remotely knew was dead, but curiously only some the animals have died, most of them still live in his forest. Good, that means animals aren't their priority, or they are the second priority. Either way it means they have an intact logic core. No matter how corrupted it is, if there's a logic core, there's a way. Ignoring Cell, almost every major villain had joined the Z fighters later on in their lives. Yamcha, Tien, Chitsu, Piccolo, Vegeta, 16, 17, 18, Bu, Beerus, Granola. When stretching the definition, Cell Juniors with 17 could be thrown into that list too. Even Frieza refused to kill Goku and Vegeta when he had the chance in Super, after he joined them for the tournament. It's this special addition of villains into the fold which keeps the Z fighters going strong. Funny, Goku could have been a villain as well, if he didn't hit his head. On top of that, in this reality, Raditz, Nappa, and Tao Pai Pai can also be added into that ever-growing list. And we are supposed to be the good guys. It's crazy how Goku changes people. We are here. Trunks' words brought Raditz out of his contemplation. Twist. Looking up he saw a locked door, which was starting to open up from the inside. With multiple mechanisms released, the door finally opened up, and a slightly haggard Bulma came into view. Trunks, you are okay dash. Stopping in her tracks, Bulma looked at Raditz with wide eyes, then her face slowly teared up when she realized it wasn't her Raditz, but his past self. Sniff. Closing her eyes, Bulma sobbed lightly, which turned into a soft cry after she felt those arms in her memory hugging her again. While Raditz consoled Bulma, Trunks gave them space and returned to his room. As he walked towards his destination, he clenched his fist and mumbled, "Just you wait. It won't be long, your reign of terror will be over," Trunks declared before going to the control room through his room's hidden pathway. He wanted to check the android's location from the satellite feed. Sitting himself in the main seat, Trunks turned on the CC satellite feed and started the global view. Soon he found the three wreaking havoc in a nearby city. Damn it, 16, 17 and 18, those guys are hunting humans again. This was a sick game the three liked to play. Well, it was mostly two because 16 only killed those who wanted the escape and didn't join in on the fun. But that didn't stop him from killing escapees anyway. It was 16 who finally dealt the killing blow to Gohan as well. This made Trunks hate him just as much as the rest. That's what they call human hunting? Seems like they have totally lost it. The gruff voice coming from behind snapped Trunks out of his rage-filled haze. Looking back, he quickly composed himself and stood up, leaving the seat to Raditz. Raditz's aura alone made him act the way he did, refusing to sit if the king stood. That's right. It's the sick act they call a game, Trunks explained with poorly hidden anger. Bulma, who stood beside Raditz, also looked on with sadness. You are right, they show signs of a corrupted logic core. Looking closely, their movements are violent beyond need. It goes against the self-preservation instincts of the human body. It seems Jero rewrote most of that too. Bulma was basically informed by Raditz on the research they did on androids' possible faults. Here in the future, after Raditz died, Bulma didn't have the luxury to research the androids, but past Raditz survived due to Trunks' interference. Her split timeline self had made a lot of progress in this field. She honestly felt jealous of her past self. This could have been her. Now even if Raditz is standing beside her again, she knew he wasn't her Raditz. He was a Raditz from the past produced by a timeline split. A timeline she had created involuntarily. She really hoped this didn't doom another set of her friends. Maybe she was way over her head thinking she can make everything better again. Maybe she should have just... Bulma, don't overthink stuff. I am here now. Everything will be fine. Just leave it all to me, alright? Raditz's words somehow magically calmed down Bulma. Maybe it was the habit developed by her for so long that was coming into play, or it was the confidence in his words. Whatever it was, she was willing to let it control her. She wanted solace from the constant pressure of survival, even for a little while. That's the Bulma I know. Good girl. Now sit back and relax. Smiling at Raditz's comfort, which she received after a long time, Bulma laughed a bit as she pushed her hair back. Yes, she was safe with Raditz now, safer than she had been in a long time. Looking at the still nervous Trunks, Bulma smiled sweetly and spoke softly. Her adopted son should also let it go for a while. He was under too much pressure since Gohan died. He is right, Trunks. We have done enough. Now, let your king take the lead. Hearing the pain behind Bulma's words, which was slowly being hidden away, Raditz suddenly started laughing boisterously, but his energy wasn't laughing. His eyes were shining golden while his hair had started fluttering. A bloodthirsty smirk was beginning to form on his face as he saw the androids firing upon a little boy. They had done too much. He wasn't Goku. He didn't have the charisma of his brother, nor did he have a big heart like him. Even then, Goku lost it when Krillin had died unjustly against Piccolo's minions. So watching this cruelty happen before his eyes as the androids laughed merrily, and the haggard state of his future wife, Raditz's legendary instincts were beginning to take over. His ki was bubbling from the inside, wanting to unleash hell upon those who had crossed his path, and for once, he decided to let these instincts take the lead. I'll be going now, Bulma. Trunks. This has gone on long enough, said Raditz lightly. He might have activated his legendary rage, but Raditz was still a man of balance. Unlike Broly, Raditz was a self-made legendary who rose from the ground up. Controlling his rage was a matter of thought for Raditz. His wrath will be unleashed upon the androids only. As for if or not they can be reprogrammed, he'll let nature take the lead. Raditz, wait dash. Bulma called Raditz, who was beginning to leave. Stopping midway, Raditz gave his back to Bulma, who spoke quickly. Take Trunks with you. Shaking his head, Raditz denied the idea. Before Bulma and Trunks can try and convince him otherwise, he spoke softly but sternly. No, I am not sure what will happen next. I have never gone into my berserk state before. I might not be able to tell enemies apart if that were to happen. Let Trunks stay here. I'll be right back. Trunks raised his hand and wanted to stop Raditz from risking it. 3 against 1 was bonkers, especially because Raditz didn't have Super Saiyan yet. Wait dash. Let him go, Trunks. Bulma softly interrupted Trunks, and Raditz took the chance to leave the building. Watching Raditz leave and the confused Trunks who didn't know why he was stopped, Bulma remained silent and wiped a tear off her eye. This might not be her Raditz, but he cared all the same. A/N. Advanced chapters ahead on Patreon. Chapter 95 Unlimited Energy vs Ever-Growing Ki. Android 17 was done with his fair share of human hunting today. He had won the contest against his dear sister 18. She was the loser once more. As for 16, the man only waited quietly in the outskirts of the broken town. Such a killjoy. 17 complained while rolling his eyes at 16, but as always 16 ignored his attempts to rile him up. If it wasn't for 16 being stronger than both of them combined, 17 would have long shown the guy who's boss. I win, 17. 18 came in flying with a vicious smile and instantly ignited 17's anger. What? I killed 28 of them, and I got a family this time around too, that gives me extra points. Putting her hair behind her ear, 18 rolled her eyes at her brother. Well, I killed more old people, they give more experience. Gore. 17 growled, his sister really liked to flaunt her killings too much, more than him, this won't work. Listen here sister dash. Boom. But out of nowhere a massive wave of energy decimated their surroundings, the yellow glowing energy had a hint of green to it, very little but it was quite noticeable. This is something 17 and 18 understood quite intuitively, because this energy blast had just hit them in the face, burning their skin from its sheer heat. While 17 and 18 were trying to get their bearing back, 16 who was sitting motionless with a bird on his finger, raised his eyes. Raditz. Highest priority. 16 said without any mood swings in his voice, now that Gaku was dead his priority has shifted to Raditz. Raditz was in fact everyone's topmost priority, as long as he lived they wouldn't be able to do what they wanted. But he was supposed to be dead, yet he stood here before him, although this didn't faze the robotic 16, it very much pissed off 17 and 18. Raditz? Are you kidding me big guy, wasn't this guy dead? Click. 17 spoke while climbing out of the crater, he was snapping his neck to get rid of the pain. 18 also climbed out of the crater with a frown on her twisted face, she was really angry her nails got destroyed in this attack. Raditz? I don't know where you hid all this while, but you messed up coming here alone. 18 threatened Raditz with sharp eyes, all three androids had their attention on him. But Raditz himself only floated before the trio, his energy going up each second and his height slowly increasing as his Iacri was tapped into more and more. Really? From what I see 18, it's you who messed up. Laughing with her hand over her mouth, 18 gave Raditz a sly look, and 17 backed his sister up too. We messed up? Buddy, did you forget the part where we have infinite energy and are stronger than you? Maybe you don't know, your kind can't sense us isn't it? Well, take it from me then, judging from your previous shot, you are strong, but you aren't anything we can't handle. 18 completed 17's words, but it's only 16 who remained quiet until now. 16 was someone who had a sensor so powerful he could detect Gohan's hidden strength before even Gohan could. And he was similarly sensing Raditz's hidden strength, and what he was sensing wasn't good at all. Negative. 16's voice brought 18 and 17's attention back to him, and 17 asked what's the problem with a shrug. Although he was curious as to why Raditz just stood there, slowly growing bigger and looking angrier, 17 had no fear. Until he heard what 16's next words that is. Target has infinite energy too. The startled 18 immediately snapped her head towards 16. What? Is he some kind of android as well? Ignoring 18's words, 16 slowly began removing his fists from its sockets. Click. Exposing the barrels inside his hand. No, he is a biological being. 17 looked unsure and questioned 16's words. You must be mistaken then, there is no way he has infinite energy. You see, he only stands there looking angry, he doesn't even have the guts to attack. Shaking his head at 17's inference, 16 raised his blasters and pointed them towards Raditz. No, he has unlimited energy, and it's growing every second. He isn't just standing there, he is gathering strength. Zoom. Yellow energy began gathering inside 16's blasters as he locked on to Raditz. During this span of time alone, he has surpassed both of your energies and is reaching mine. Suggested action, eliminate swiftly. 17 and 18 although were unsure but were starting to feel some fear, seeing 16 so serious they had to get serious too. But 17 wasn't very pleased that he was said to be weaker than Raditz, he would prove the big guy wrong, maybe that will bring down his attitude. You hear the big guy, how about dash? I am almost habituated to my rage form, thanks for waiting, everyone. Raditz's sudden words stopped 17 mid-sentence, and they sounded very mocking to 17, who glared at the massive man and was about to attack. Boom. But 16 was faster than him, and the energy cannons hit the floating Raditz. A point-blank attack. He doesn't look very smart, he just sat there and took it. 18 huffed watching the energy drown Raditz's body, but 16 immediately opened his eyes wide and yelled, "Get down." Crack. Sadly before they could, 17 and 18 both felt their spines crack. Boom, boom, and got ragdolled into some buildings. The siblings had no idea what just hit them, but 16 saw it clearly. Raditz had teleported behind the siblings and each of his foot made contact with each of their lower backs. The resulting shockwave alone had 16 tensed. This wasn't just a pure key amped attack, it was hitting much harder than it was supposed to. Your muscles, they are stronger than what they should be, said 16 before reattaching his fists to his body. With the speed Raditz just showed he can never lock onto him anymore. Turning towards 16 who was getting ready to brawl, Raditz's yellow eyes started at him without emotion. Although the well-hidden rage behind his eyes was something 16's sensors had detected. And he had reached a conclusion, that all this time Raditz wasn't only increasing his power, he was trying to tame his emotions. So your sensors found it huh? Sorry, never had to use this state, it's new to me and I was a little jerky. But I am certainly good to go now, thanks for giving me the time. Flipping his royal robe with well-hidden anger behind his stare, Raditz took his stance. I heard that I am your top priority and you are supposed to be really durable, the second toughest android. Let's test that theory shall we? Swish. Suddenly teleporting before 16, Raditz elbowed the man straight into his metallic gut. Crack. Cracking the housing from inside, 16 himself was sent flying through the air and crashed into the struggling 18. again downing both of them, hurting 18 more than hurting 16. 17 had also climbed up by now from sheer tenacity and was glaring at Raditz. "You monster!" spat 17, and immediately flew towards Raditz, attacking him head-on. Boom! And was met with a fist straight to his cheek, sending him crashing into the growing pile of androids, once again burying 18 and 16 into the rubble. But Raditz knew, although he seems to be having the upper hand now, it was because they weren't fighting together. "I tried to take them out one by one, but these guys are too durable. Looks like it's a tough fight ahead then." Although watching the androids climbing up from the pit, Raditz didn't look too tensed. He had a good grasp of his state now. Unless he is knocked out, his body will always produce energy, and if he keeps it to levels he can control, he'll essentially have infinite energy and won't lose control. Now it was just a matter of time. He will get used to his current level of power before growing further. The androids were doomed from the moment they gave Raditz the chance to get used to his abilities. Now their lifespan depended entirely on how fast Raditz can master his new power level. "You know, you guys would have made good training partners. Shame you had to be such sick bastards." Raditz's words echoed in the dusty battlefield. Hearing that 17 and 18 were completely pissed and slightly fearful too. They weren't showing it, but they were hurt pretty badly with that kick. 16 was right. They have to team up or they were toast. A/N. Advanced chapters ahead on Patreon. Chapter 96 Retreat. It was day 3 of Raditz vs the android trio, and crazily, it was the androids who were beginning to show signs of fatigue. As for Raditz, he had been brutally injured multiple times in this fight, but his buffed regeneration and constantly adapting ki kept him going. In fact, if he wanted to, he could have finished the trio off in half an hour by constantly pushing his Akari. Legendary Super Saiyan's ability to adapt was no joke. But Raditz wasn't short-sighted enough to go for a quick ki boost and lose balance, especially when not in immediate danger. The androids will lose sooner or later. No need to waste his hard-earned ki control for the trio. "TCH, this monster." 18 growled. Her arm was currently bent in the wrong way, and her entire body was hurting, but she wasn't alone. 17 had one of his legs broken and could barely fly. As for 16, he fared much better but also had a cracked skull. "Monster? I prefer to go by Legendary Super Saiyan. You lot really make nice training dummies. I have grown in strength, adapted to it and grown again, all because of your infinite energy. Where else would I find such good training dummies?" Most of them quit within a few punches. Hearing the balanced mockery, the androids were not even in the mood to talk back. They were very scared right now. According to 16, if this guy wasn't trying to gain control over his ever-growing strength and actually let it grow all the time, they would long have been dead. This scared the hell out of the trio. They had tried desperately to kill him before he adapts, but it has been for naught. "We should retreat. We can't beat him," 17 said in a low voice. No matter how humiliating it felt to him, he wasn't going to put his sister in danger. Same thoughts were on 18's mind. She also felt retreat and a sneak attack on Raditz was the best option. Although they didn't have the luxury to understand this now, but slowly, through the sheer terror they were experiencing, their natural instincts were beginning to overpower their code overcorrection. They were after all once human, Lapis and Lazuli. It isn't easy to remove core instincts of self-preservation from a human, triggering of which was starting to disconnect them from the shackles of Jero's code. They are actually thinking of retreating? It seems they are beginning to regain senses. Sadly, this will only work for 17 and 18. 16 is fully mechanical. He will just have to will himself out of it using loopholes, like he did in the original. Raditz always had his attention on the androids' thoughts all this time, and throughout the 3-day period, he had seen their thoughts go from simple brutal killing to more irrational approach. If they were beginning to overpower their killing code, Raditz didn't mind giving them one chance, but if they go on a killing spree after regaining their senses, they will swiftly meet their end. In fact, the only reason Raditz even wanted to give them a chance was because he knew they weren't bad by default. The original timeline had shown that very clearly. If they overpower Jero's brainwashing, they will return to being Lapis and Lazuli once more. "Although I am a bit upset that you think I can't hear your whispers, but I can consider letting you retreat. I have one condition though." Color drained from the androids' faces, even their whispers were overheard. Is this guy a Namekian or what? Although it was very humiliating, 17 once again compromised. "What do you want?" Giving a plain smile, Raditz gestured towards 16. "Him, I am very interested in how he was made. Heard he was built upon the image of Jero's son, but he is completely mechanical. This is some amazing technology. No matter how crazy Jero is, you gotta praise his intelligence, no?" 18 and 17 clenched their teeth with that sentence. They hated Jero with passion, so they disliked the good words spoken about him, which again had Raditz narrow his eyes. They were definitely overcoming their brainwashing. It was obvious now. It shouldn't be long now that they will go back to being their original selves. As long as the threat of Raditz exists in their minds, their real death was a possibility, and this alone will keep their instincts active, sooner or later becoming normal once more. "No, we can't give you 16 dash. Take him." 17 interrupted 18's words and ignored the angry face of 18. Although he disliked the guy and didn't want to do this either, he wasn't willing to compromise his sister's safety for 16. One was family and one was a partner he didn't particularly like, so this might not feel good to 18 and she might not agree. 17 decided to save themselves first. "That was quick. I figured you lot have more spunk left in you that I gotta beat out. Sad you folded too soon." You can go then, and before I forget, understand this, you aren't going to kill indiscriminately again. You should realize this isn't your idea, it is Jero's brainwashing that made you this way. I don't need to tell you what will happen if I catch another set of ki evaporating from Earth, so keep yourselves in check or I'll do it for you. Raditz's threat only had a silent snort from 17. 18 herself only felt angry that they were ditching 16. She didn't like the feeling of backstabbing her partners. So trying one last time, 18 questioned 16. Why don't you say something for yourself 16? You know we can't force you if you want to run. 16 slowly smiled with his back turned towards 18, then spoke softly. Thank you, but this is the best course of action. It's either complete annihilation or only my end. The choice is only logical. Even 17 felt bad after hearing 16's selfless words, but didn't say anything to stop him. He still can't put his sister in danger. Sun King, I'll come with you. Please let them go. Nodding his head magnanimous, Raditz gestured at 17 and 18 to leave. Sure, go, get yourself patched and find something to do which isn't as psychotic. Snorting softly once more, 17 turned around with 18 and said before leaving. You don't need to repeat yourself, we aren't Jero's slaves. Both siblings had built up a newfound hatred for Jero since the moment Raditz praised him, or maybe it's better to say they awakened the previously suppressed hatred. Whatever it was, at least 17 was definitely prideful enough to not go on a rampage again, especially because that would be following Jero's orders, and he was more than enough to stop 18 if she wanted to do so. With that taken care of, now about you 16. Flying towards the powered down Raditz, 16 asked plainly. What do you want me to do? Smiling at the stoic 16, Raditz gave a proposed. How would you like me to revert you back to normal? No Jero messing around with your thoughts. 17 and 18 can do it naturally, but you have to find loopholes to do this. Bulma even in the original had worked on 16 and even removed the explosive from inside of him, without 16 even realizing it. Now Bulma had extensively worked on the androids, reprogramming 16 was easy for Raditz, especially with future Bulma around to help him. With this, even if the siblings don't learn their lesson, future Bulma will have a strong man like 16 around to protect her. He was more powerful than 17 and 18 combined, and was fully mechanical on top of being a good guy. After a reprogramming he would be one of the strongest Z-fighter around. Chapter 97 Abandoned Lookout Raditz was checking the damage done to Android 16. The machine man had some of his parts cracked with the biggest damage being the large hole opened on the side of his skull. His electronic innards were exposed to the air, and sparking once a while, signifying a short circuit happening inside. But 16 was so robustly built that he shrugged off this heavy damage to this head like nothing. 16, let's get you patched up a little, then it's time for some burner code pads. Taking a small capsule out of his armor, Raditz threw it up and down while playing with it. Then told 16 what his idea was, if the big guy didn't mind he'll go ahead with it. This is something me and Bulma came up with. This little thing right here is used to modify android code on the go. But without proper lab support it works superficially and it's useful only for fully mechanical constructs such as yourself. 16 remained quiet for a while, thinking over the best course of actions, and then agreed to getting a revamp. He was a peaceful man at heart. If he could get rid of the voice forcing him to assist the siblings in their killings, he wouldn't mind doing it. He had come here to die. Not having to die and getting another chance was the most logical choice to 16's artificial mind. I do not mind. When do we begin? 16's careless tone didn't detract Raditz's attention from the fact that 16 was ready to get treated by his current kill highest priority. His ability to ignore orders using logical loopholes was something only a truly sentient machine can do. Jero somehow managed to give human sentience to a machine, a full-blown consciousness on a microchip. Nice. That's the spirit. We can start now. There's an abandoned hospital a few blocks away from here. Raditz said while pointing towards the south side of the destroyed block. I'll start your modifications there. Go and wait for me at the hospital. I'll be right back. Nodding his head 16 agreed to the conditions and left. Raditz calmly watched him leave, then put 2 fingers on his forehead and teleported to Bulma. Swish. Ah Raditz, you won? You really did it, said Bulma while she hugged Raditz and exclaimed with happiness. We were so worried when you kept fighting for 3 days straight. Trunks almost couldn't help but rush out to help. Bulma's complaints made Raditz turn towards Trunks, who although looked happy was worried about something. What he was worried about Raditz didn't need to ask, it was written all over his face, but for the sake of his self-respect, Raditz asked anyways. What's got you worried Trunks? Trunks seemed unsure on how he should go about asking this, but then made up his mind to ask Raditz straight. Is letting them go really a good idea? The mood in the room was brought down quite a bit from Trunks' words. Bulma left Raditz's hug and wanted to convince Trunks not to have such a pessimistic attitude. She had seen the likes of Piccolo, Raditz, Nappa and Vegeta turn good. It didn't always have to be a do-or-die situation unless the villain in question was Frieza. But Raditz shook his head at her and stopped her from shutting down Trunks. He wanted to give the boy's perspective a shot, so he thought about it seriously and then after a few minutes, gave Trunks an answer. While I believe in my judgment I also understand your concerns. To address that, I'll be staying here in the future for a while, said Raditz while looking at the monitors showing the ruined Earth, his gaze focusing on one particular monitor showing a large man with afro. As long as I stay here, even if the androids misbehave I can kill them, and after I leave I'll let the reprogrammed 16 stay with you. he'll be able to keep the two of them in check, although I don't think any of this is necessary, but there you go, your contingency plans. Trunks blushed from shame. He felt as if Raditz was simply humoring him like a kid, but he wasn't mad. He also knew Raditz was a better judge of character than him. He understood that very clearly when Raditz tore apart his disguise as soon as he returned back to past. But his concerns weren't something arbitrary. He has lost almost everyone to the androids. He was a new generation of Z-fighter who didn't know how old Z-fighters handled situations. Because he grew up watching the androids, in a twisted way their kill or get killed mentality is something he adopted as well. Thank you, I am sorry for doubting you, Mr. Raditz. Trunks stood straight and gave a mock salute, trying to remove the awkwardness he had built up earlier. Playing along with him, Raditz laughed and patted his back, then looked at Bulma and asked her, I am going to use the code burner to mess with Android 16's code, change his goals to protecting Earth instead of targeting me and Kakarot. You coming with me? Help is always appreciated, and you can come too, Trunks, but I would prefer if you visited the lookout. Giving the confused Trunks an explanation of what he wanted to say, Raditz clarified. The lookout is Earth's god's place. Kami might be dead due to Piccolo being dead, but Mr. Popo should still be alive. Raditz explained. He had confirmed something important before coming to the future. Like the angels were God of Destruction's guides, Mr. Popo was the designated Kami's guide. So if Kami dies and the post is completely abandoned for a long time, Mr. Popo goes into standby mode and will only appear again when a new Kami is chosen by the lookout. The lookout is currently ownerless, and you fit both criteria for a Kami, a good-hearted person and a strong one to boot. You arriving at the lookout now should technically promote you to Kami immediately, especially given the state of the Earth right now. Trunks listened with wide open mouth, and then pointed towards himself with confusion. Me? A Kami? Said Trunks, but only he was confused or even took this as seriously. Both Raditz and Bulma were old-timers compared to him. What kind of demon, Kami, and aliens did they not see? Bulma felt this opportunity was a good one. Earth's Kami's role was similar to the Kai's role. Earth getting a new god was a step in the right direction. And they needed every step in the right direction after the android debacle. She'll do her best to convince her adopted son. It was for his best too. He had too much on his shoulders. As her mom and name, Bulma wanted Trunks to get a raise. Chapter 98 Earth's Hope. Bulma always wanted the best for Trunks, so keeping in mind her adopted son's bright future, Bulma made her pitch, supporting Raditz's idea straight away. It's a good thing, Trunks. You should give it a shot. Who knows, maybe you can do something to fix Earth sooner. Something which only Earth's Kami can do with his authority? There has to something like that, otherwise there wouldn't be much of a point for the position. Some might consider Dragon Balls a thing only Kami could do, and it would be right in Earth's case until now, but Bulma knew Dragon Balls were a Namekian thing, not a Kami thing. And she also knew Goku was invited to become Earth's Kami when he was in his teens. That means the post takes anyone capable enough. It's not only for Namekians. So besides the unrelated Dragon Balls, there had to be more to Kami's authority. It might be because of Kami's weak strength that he couldn't exercise this authority. Raditz agreed to Bulma's thought process and decided to back her up like she did to him, pushing Trunks further on the road to Kamihood. Bulma's pretty spot on, Trunks. You have used the sensu beans, right? They can be considered to be something under Kami's domain. Those beans are so few in numbers because they use the earth and its inhabitants' prosperity and extra vitality to grow. This is something which can only be done in Korin Tower and nowhere else in the world. If sensu beans could be specific to the lookout and Korin Tower, there could be more things which were. And Raditz knew of two more things Earth's Kami can do. He had the ability to see anywhere on Earth without hindrance, and had the ability to project his soul into someone's body. Essential, creating an avatar of God type of scenario. Now those were things Kami had shown doing during his reign, but this wasn't what was important to them right now. What they needed was a way to feed back to Earth as Kami. Bring back the lost vitality and prosperity, and if it really doesn't work, no harm done. They'll just do it the old-fashioned way, hard labor. Gulp. Trunks gulped from the sudden pressure. Seriously, when he woke up today, becoming Kami wasn't in his agenda. But Bulma and Raditz trusted him so much, he can't let them down. I'll do it. I'll go to the lookout. Trunks said, faking his confidence, which even if Raditz saw he didn't comment on it, and only encouraged him along. Taking a deep breath, Trunks turned away and left after leaving a word. I'll be off. Whoosh. Watching Trunks fly away, Bulma turned towards Raditz and asked, you have something else in mind, don't you? Looking at his wife's future counterpart, Raditz gave a cheeky smile. I do. Kamis have something I call God Key. It comes with the post, so I wonder, what will happen if a Saiyan, no, a Super Saiyan was to become one? Will nothing change? Will some change be there but it will be minimal? Or will he truly become a god? A Super Saiyan god? Now this seemed like a far-fetched idea to Bulma, but she didn't shoot it down either. Raditz was the Saiyan King and the legendary one to boot. Him having a feeling of something like that existing should be sufficient proof of it existing, at least having a possibility of existing. So even if Bulma figured the chances of first and second option were much more, she didn't say anything to refute the third option, and simply agreed. That would be good news, but I am not sure how much more powerful he can become even if he does receive a boost. Earth is in a pretty bad condition right now. Trunks might even need to provide energy first, before he can even think of getting something back. Hearing this, Raditz had a thoughtful look to him. Bulma wasn't wrong in her logic. This could definitely be a possibility, but it still doesn't hurt to try. If it didn't happen, it didn't happen, no big deal, Trunks can develop Super Saiyan all the way, that should be enough to deal with a possible Buu attack. As for Zamasu, even Raditz wasn't even sure of dealing with him. Goku even used Hakai, a god of destruction's skill specifically meant to destroy everything, and the immortal Zamasu shrugged it off. Nobody other than Zeno can actually kill the immortal Zamasu. Super Dragon Balls are extremely powerful. A wish made using them cannot be overridden by anything other than Zeno nuking the entire timeline. So if Goku Black and Zamasu arrive to threaten this timeline, Trunks should just take Bulma and run back to the past. Doesn't matter if Zamasu himself does it or Zeno does it, in the end this timeline is doomed for good. A few more years at best, that was what this timeline had left in it, but Raditz still wanted to change that if he could. Not only was future Bulma here and likely wanted to stay here, he also wanted to have all the help he can get in dealing with someone like Zamasu. And this is where Satan would come into play. It was now time for Satan to fulfill his destiny and defeat the big bad, bringing hope to Earth in a way only he can. With him defeating the androids, coupled with some sob story Satan will no doubt cook up for them, Earth will have a lot of room for choosing a rebuilding direction. Best case scenario would be shifting the civilization's focus towards Ki. If the scientific minds of Earth put their minds to it and develop Ki to its limits, Earth can become a great asset, but before any of that is possible, Satan has to succeed first. What Earth urgently needed right now was hope, and Satan can provide that hope. It might be false hope, but with Trunks and 16 backing him up, even false hope can become real hope. Should we go? 16 is waiting for a while, it would be a shame if he leaves. Bulma's voice broke Raditz's contemplation, and then he nodded lightly, putting his hand on Bulma's shoulder. Raditz initiated instant transmission. Sish. We are here 16, sorry for the delay, had to get an expert. 16 looked at Bulma and scanned her data. I understand, where do we begin? Walking along with Bulma, Raditz gestured for 16 to follow. Floor 2, it's got an intact ICU. As 16 made his way with them, Raditz simulated the operation in his thoughts, hoping the code rewrite goes well, because if it does, future Bulma would have an actual asset in her hands. 16 being purely mechanical wasn't as unreliable as 17 and 18 could theoretically be. Bringing him to the good side was always a plus in this case. This is more so with the potential androids showed later in the series. 17 in particular had a lot of untapped potential. 16 and 18 were built similarly, so they should be somewhat comparable. All three after all were built using infinite energy reactors. 17 had almost gone up to Super Saiyan 3 levels after sparsely training with Cell Juniors on his island. If handled correctly, these three could become Trunks' Tien, Piccolo, and Vegeta, as long as Trunks stays smart about this, and he will have it in the bag. Chapter 99 Weaponized Ki. After 16 was powered down and lying on the ICU bed, Bulma connected the code burner and checked a few things. Then swiftly disabled them one by one except for one thing which she couldn't disable. There, I have turned off everything, location, sensors, cache history. But I cannot turn off the explosive in his chest. If the android siblings have that too, then it's bad news. Nodding subtly, Raditz silently kept on monitoring the side-loaded code. After Bulma did some final touches and all of them turned green, Raditz smiled. Anything which can compromise our position is turned off. Asked Raditz while touching Android 16's left chest. This is where the explosive is located. Bulma replied while fixing up her hair and detaching the code burner from 16. Yes, all problems are solved temporarily. We can do what you actually wanted to do now. Raditz chuckled. He didn't ask how Bulma figured out he had other things in mind and didn't want to tell 16 the entire thing. This was future Bulma and he was the past Raditz. A tactic understanding of this level is normal. We take apart 16 completely. Jero has a habit of attaching extra memory cores as backup. But they aren't possible to modify using simple code, it's a physical process. So we solve what we can here, then take him home and do the rest. Bulma kept working and nodded along. She knew that had to be a main reason on Raditz's part. He didn't want the androids to know what level of modification was going to be done on them, and it wasn't about secrecy either. It was a defense against what Jero could have done to them. Raditz had sensed the explosives in their chests. Those explosives could have any number of conditions attached to them. Conditions which might be along the lines of anti-tampering protection. Bulma knew if Jero was really serious about making killer androids, having measures against changing the code was a decision he will always do. Done? I have removed what I can, let's go. Nodding lightly, Raditz grabbed onto his future wife and 16, then focused on the position of Capsule Corporation's lab. Although instant transmission works with sensing Ki, having a clear idea on where one wants to go plus the key of the environment around that place can work as a good substitute. That's what Raditz was using since the moment he had to fight the androids, a type of enemy he couldn't sense. Found it, get ready, Sish. Appearing back into the lab, Bulma coordinated herself and Raditz kept 16 on the bench, hooking him with destabilizers to eliminate any semblance of control Jero might have. As Bulma started opening up Android 16 further, Raditz backed away and spoke lightly. You handle this on your own for a bit, I will go and meet Satan. If you need me just give me a call, I'll take one of the satellite phones. Pausing for a while, Bulma continued after she went over the possibility of such an action. It was definitely doable. Okay, I think I'll be fine. See, the android siblings even split up. That 17 is holing up in an island, and 18 is running around a restaurant. Does she want to eat? Watching the android slowly look at the food and eat it in large bites, Bulma murmured. To feel more human perhaps? She must have seen the people hiding around the area right. She didn't attack them yet, that's some progress, haha, it's funny how this entire thing could have been avoided if you and Gaku didn't die. Bulma laughed a little sadly, but quickly cheered herself up again, at least it was over now. Raditz lightly squeezed Bulma's shoulder for support and then let go. She was a tough girl, she will handle herself well. It's over now. After a pause Raditz continued with a bit more cheerful tone. I'll get this done as soon as possible, so we can spend the remaining time together. I'll be here for a while after all. That definitely lit up Bulma's eyes, and her hands relaxed, giving a smile to him. Bulma fixed her hair and kept working, but now she had a smiling face. Swish. Vanishing swiftly Raditz looked around. He was now in the sky, looking down at Satan and a bunch of people hiding together. Satan was leading the team, with loud and brash statements, but Raditz knew him well enough to know, he must be shaking in his boots right now. Men, we must bide our time. I'll defeat the androids. Mr. Raditz had told me, he's working to kill them as we speak. This guy, he's pulling my name even when I am dead. Satan's words were enthusiastic, but the crowd seemed unsure. Satan's been saying the same thing for as long as the androids have been around. Now people were beginning to become shaken. Satan's back was also sweating from the lack of response. He knew he had milked Raditz's name for all it was worth. What do I do? They'll kill me if they knew I have been messing with them the entire time. One of the fierce-looking men finally made up his mind and interrupted Satan's speech. Mr. Satan, we would like to meet Champion Raditz. After the news for his death was released, no one has seen him. Although we believe you, but it's been too long, I hope you understand our concerns. The fierce-looking man spoke elegantly, making a sharp contrast appear, but Satan wasn't in the mood to admire this. He knew this man, a scholar who had become rugged during the days of Android Fiasco. The man had a ruthless heart. Satan was always wary of this man, and now he seems to be in big trouble. I have him on call. I'll call him right away. I just need to go to the toilet once. Satan wanted to use the age-old trick of slipping away, but the man spoke up. We would prefer if you called Champion Raditz before us first. For a big guy such as yourself, I am sure you can hold it in for a while. Shiver. Satan shivered from the changing eyes of the crowd and slowly started backing away. The crowd seems to have known he would do that and began approaching him, slowly trapping him into a circle. Wait, we can talk about this. Satan said shakily. He might get out of here, but now was the last of days. Anyone who could survive this was a ruthless man. Satan would lose a limb of two making a break. He didn't want to do that in these times. A broken man meant a dead man during these times. There's nothing to stop Satan. We have a reason to believe you have been playing with our feelings. Now, hand over the keys to the villa, Satan dash. Whoosh. The group instantly got on guard and began seeking cover. These kind of sounds were from androids flying, and everyone who had survived till today knew to hide when they arrived. But the sound was too close, so not everyone could leave quickly, and those who didn't looked up desperately at their demise. And those who could hide at least a little bit clenched their teeth and tried to make themselves as quiet as possible. Champion Raditz. But the quietness was broken by the exclamation by the crowd, which remained, promoting them to look up shakily, and when they did, similar exclamations echoed throughout the area. Champion? He is here. Satan didn't lie to us. Sorry Mr. Satan, I hope you find it in your heart to forgive me. I only wanted the best for everyone. The fierce-looking scholar bowed to Satan once and then excitedly brought out his Raditz plushie. It was beaten up, but it was the thing that kept him going all this time. Mr. Raditz? Please save us. Please bring back Sayaman justice. The scholar seems to have gone back to the days when he was just an otaku. Gone was his ferocity. Now he was just a fan wanting his idol to save him from hell. It wasn't only him, everyone was extremely happy, and most of all Satan was happy. He was almost crying from happiness. Now he wouldn't have to die. Mr. Raditz, I did everything I can, said Satan, attempting to get close to Raditz, who twitched his lips. He knew exactly what Satan did. Yeah, I know all about it Satan. How good you did. We will talk about that later. Sweating once more, Satan trembled and looked at Raditz with a crying expression which Raditz promptly ignored. He focused his attention on the crowd, most specifically the scholar. I am back. Sorry it took so long. The androids are now my problem. I have seen you all. You did well. Now Sayaman is here, but too many have been lost. Sayaman Titan is dead. Nappa's demise hit the scholar hard. He stumbled back. Sayaman Titan was the second best Sayaman besides Sayaman Prime. Those damn androids? It is as you think. I am back, but I can't do this alone. In my absence the entire Sayaman cast has been wiped out. Gasp. So, I need your help. Can you become the next Sayaman? Pointing towards the fierce scholar Raditz asked passionately, which made the crowd excited murmur. The man particularly was almost red from excitement, and Raditz looked on with a holy look to him, all the while thinking that the first step in introducing Ki to the new earth was done. Before he returns, he'll make sure everyone knows Ki at least to some degree. Zamasu will be in for a nasty surprise if Earthlings manage to weaponize Ki as well as they do other things. Chapter 100 Last moments. Raditz's speech had pumped up the small group of survivors like never before. He didn't even have to do much. He was the survivors' sole spiritual sustenance. Him coming here had almost made them delusional. But the android threat was truly over, so they can afford to let loose, even if they don't know it yet. After Raditz and Satan spent a whole lot of time assigning jobs, they let the newly appointed messengers spread the word that hope was here. That will be it, folks. In a few more days the threat of androids will be all gone. And remember, Kia Hem, Force is something within all of us, you just have to believe. Now I must go, another group of tentacious survivors need dash. Beep, beep, beep. Raditz's heartfelt speech was disrupted by his satellite phone's beeping in the emergency pattern. Quickly picking it up as this was a call from Bulma, Raditz responded with swift and to-the-point answer. I am here. The restaurant? Quick, 18 is going critical. Raditz's size shrank. What? 18 was going to blow up? How did her explosive activate? Damn it, if 18 was going critical so should 17. Maybe Bulma didn't mention that because unlike 18, he isn't in the heart of a hideout. Just a second. Quick, you got 10 seconds left. Frowning hard, Raditz dropped the satellite phone and concentrated, but he wasn't able to pinpoint her location quickly. Shit, I barely remember the environment around her, much less its key. Found it, hopefully this is it. Swish. As Raditz vanished, the survivors looked at each other with fearful eyes. One of the androids was going to cause havoc and Raditz was all alone trying to save them? The fierce scholar used his quick wit and picked up the satellite phone. Raditz was too busy to keep. Looking at the call still connected, he asked the one in the opposite end. Hello, excuse me, is Mr. Raditz going to be okay? Huh? How would I know? Just hope to God he'll be fine, or else there's going to be hell from past. Why did Jero have 16's explosive connected with 17 and 18? I swear dash. Click. Disconnecting the call in a hurry, Bulma seems to have started trying to salvage whatever she can and the fierce man clutched the phone. She might be Dr. B? Everyone, Dr. B is trying to support Sayamon. The fierce man once again used his mind to put 2 and 2 together and riled everyone up by telling them the truth. His superhero was right now trying to save everyone as an explosive was about to blow up on his face. In movies these kind of explosives are often deadly to the hero, so this must be some powerful stuff, right? The man thought with sweat pouring down his hands. He was just assigned as a new Sayamon. If Prime was to fall he'll have to pick up the mantle. He wasn't ready. He sure hoped Prime beats the situation. Meanwhile at the restaurant where 18 was eating. Swish. Teleporting before 18, Raditz turned around and looked at her sitting in a daze, her spoon having been dropped to the ground. This idiot? Why is she sitting in a daze? At least fly upwards into the sky. Seeing 18 with her eyes shaking, Raditz clicked his tongue. This situation wasn't a joke. This was the same explosive that was capable of eradicating Perfect Cell, the one inside 16 which past Bulma took out. Although Raditz was sure he can survive the blast, he didn't have enough time to contain the blast or get her out of here, especially not enough time to concentrate on a place that didn't have enough civilians. And why was she still sitting in a daze? Move yourself, fool. At least try to get yourself into open. Do you simply want to die? Raditz growled at her, which caused 18's eyes to shake, and then soon her face morphed into one of rage. What are you doing here? Get out. The explosive has been activated. I am done. You won? Now out. Get out. Get out. Raditz understood right away from her hysterical shouting that her imminent death had scared her a bit too much. She's around a hideout, something she seems to have forgotten or simply doesn't care about anymore. Her sudden demise almost has her catatonic. This won't do. Like this she won't even make an attempt to contain the blast. Not only will she definitely die, she'll take everyone along with her. I'll just have to contain it for her. Here goes nothing. Do your thing, a carry. Growl. Eyes shining bright yellow, Raditz walked towards her, which made 18 look at him with a shaken look. What are you doing? Run, get out of here. Are you trying to rub it into my face that you won? I dash. Clutch. A sudden tight hug from Raditz had android 18 shut up involuntarily. You are hugging me. Now of all times. I am going to die. Why now? Run, you don't have to show pity to me. Run and save yourself. Raditz meanwhile didn't care one bit about 18's fantasies because he was much more concentrated on covering the explosive inside her with his ki. His arms wrapped around the exact part where the explosive would be leaking from her back. This was all the hug was for. There was no pity here, only an attempt to contain the explosion. What are you still doing here, dash? Shut up, 18. Let me concentrate. Raditz's words seems to have somehow worked and 18 slowly began hyperventilating less. She turned white and had a face which showed she was contemplating her life, which was flashing before her eyes. Who would have thought in my final moments it's my highest priority who would try to save me? He surely knows it's an explosive capable of killing him too. He's still trying to save me. Is this what being strong is all about? I have done some truly horrible things. 18 could feel her explosive heating up, but she could also feel the powerful arms of Raditz wrapped around her. They gave her security she didn't think she could get in this situation. So looking up from his chest, 18 spoke with a sigh. It's going to blow up any moment. Thanks for being there for me. Sorry. Raditz meanwhile completely ignored her words in favor of concentrating and finally showed a relieved smile. He managed to sense a place with no one around. Now he can teleport 18 to that spot and keep the damage to a minimum. Hold tight. What dash? Swish. 18 found herself up in the darkening evening sky. The peaking moon attracted her and so did the devastation below, something which she had caused. It all felt so surreal to her now. She especially felt thankful to Raditz, who stuck around, trying his best to protect her even now. Raditz. Thank you. You'll be fine. Raditz assured 18 so she doesn't make any wrong moves and messes up the situation further, and she might actually survive if she lets him do his thing. But to 18 Raditz's words sounded kind, a kind of assurance which can keep her going. I see. Boom. With her thanks, the explosive within her chest finally detonated in the night skies. The sheer energy emitted from it caused the skies to brighten like day. In another spot away from civilization another such detonation occurred. 17 blew up along with his sister. Both spent their last moments contemplating the scale of what they have done and feeling the remorse for it. All the pain and suffering they had dished out had come back to bite them from within. A poetic way to go, but such was life, full of such poetic justice.